It is the 1870s in Athens, and the olive presswork is yours tonight, with its odd little ways that actually fit the stones, the season, and the patient hands that keep them moving. Settle in, and let your breathing find the slow turn of the press. We'll stay beside you in the warm, dim room, where the air smells of crushed fruit, damp baskets, wood smoke, and old oil darkened into the grain of every beam. The press house stands just beyond the busier streets of 1870s Athens, where the city is still finding its shape between ancient stone and new lime-washed walls. You hear a cart outside before you see it, the wheels clicking over uneven ground, the mule breathing softly in the cool air. Inside, the floor is swept but never truly clean, because olive pulp has a way of staying near. It clings to cracks, to rope, to leather, to the cuffs of your sleeves. You begin by opening the door wider, and the morning slides in as a pale grey strip across the floor. The stones wait in the center, broad and patient, with their rounded edges and old scars. They are not elegant, exactly, yet they belong here. In an Athens olive press of the 1870s, almost everything belongs by long habit, even the arrangements that might seem strange at first glance. The baskets are stacked near the wall, shallow and round, made from tough fiber that scratches lightly against your fingers. Some are newer and still hold a dry, grassy smell. Others have been used for years, and they carry the richer scent of oil, pulp, and damp winter work. You lift one from the stack and feel how it bends just enough, not because it is weak, but because it knows the weight it will soon carry. Outside, the olives have come in from groves scattered around Attica, from slopes where grey leaves shimmer in wind, and from family trees that have stood longer than anyone remembers. You don't need to count the trees. You know them by their fruit. Some olives are small and tight, some bruised from travel, some dusty from the road, and some still cool from the morning shade beneath the branches. We can take our time here, because the work has never cared for rushing. The first task is sorting, and your hands learn the small judgments before your mind names them. Stones, twigs, leaves, and bits of earth are picked away and dropped aside with a dry little sound. Good olives roll into the waiting measure, dull green and purple black, each one holding its small store of oil beneath the skin. The oddness of the place begins in its order, which is not quite the order of a large factory, and not quite the order of a farmhouse yard. Athens in the 1870s is full of such in-between things. New streets lead toward older habits. Imported iron tools sit beside wooden levers polished by generations. A press may have one part recently repaired by a city smith, while another part looks as if it came from a village memory. You carry the sorted olives toward the crushing stones, and the room seems to gather itself around that center. The millstone is heavy, circular, and slow, turned by animal strength or by men when need presses close. Its groove holds the olives as they break beneath the turning weight. The sound is soft at first, more of a wet bruising than a crack, and then it becomes a thick, steady grinding. There is a rhythm in the handle, in the animal's step, in the scrape of stone against stone. You feel it through your shoes. You smell the first green sharpness rising from the broken fruit, brighter than the room itself. Olive oil begins as something almost wild in the air, bitter and fresh, before the press, the mats, and the waiting jars make it calm enough for kitchen, lamp, and table. And as the early light settles across the press house, we move from the quiet sorting into the longer circle of crushing, where the first odd method of 1870s Athens begins to make its own kind of sense. The stones do not hurry, and neither do you. In the Athens olive press, the crushing is allowed to become a patient turning, because a crushed olive is not the same as a torn one. Too much violence can bruise the taste into harshness. Too little pressure leaves the fruit stubborn and whole. So you watch the paste forming beneath the stone, dark and glossy, flecked with bits of skin and pale broken flesh. This is one of the ways that may seem odd from far away. The press does not always chase perfect smoothness. It accepts texture. It leaves some sign of the olive behind because the next stage needs a paste that can breathe through baskets and give up oil without sealing itself like mud. You learn this by feel, pressing a little between your fingers, sensing whether it is too coarse, too dry, or just yielding enough. The mule circles with a patient footfall, each step making the harness creak and the wooden gear murmur. If there is no animal available, the work grows heavier, and you feel the handle through your shoulders, your back, and the soft ache in your palms. The room is cool at the edges but warmer near the work. Steam does not rise, exactly, but the smell thickens as if the olives are giving off the memory of sunlight. In 1870s Athens, some presses are old enough to carry village customs into the capital's edge. A man from one district may swear by one pace of turning, while another trusts a different length of grinding. You listen to such talk without argument. The proof comes later, in the flow of oil and water, in the color that gathers at the surface, and in the quiet face of the person who tastes it. You scrape the paste inward with a wooden paddle, keeping it where the stone can reach. The tool is smooth from use, darker near the blade, and it fits your hand as if work itself has shaped it. Bits of paste cling to the edge. You wipe them back into the path of the stone, and the room answers with another slow round, another soft crush, another turn toward readiness. There is comfort in work that tells you when it is done, not with a bell and not with a written rule, but with weight, sound, smell, and color. The paste grows even, the sharp green scent softens, the stone moves through it with less chatter. By then your hands already know, and we only put words around what your hands understood first. When the paste has taken on that deep, shining heaviness, the morning changes again, and we carry the crushed olives toward the woven mats that wait like quiet pages against the wall. The mats are called by different names in different places, but here in the Athens press house, they are simply part of the day's furniture, as familiar as the door latch. You lift one with both hands, and it sags slightly, open-mouthed and ready. Its fibers are rough against your skin. The smell is earthy and oily, with a trace of damp straw, and it seems to hold every season it has served. Now the odd arrangement becomes clearer. The paste is not poured into a solid mold. It is spread onto flexible woven discs, layer by layer, with a hole or opening that lets them stack around the press spindle. This looks humble, almost too simple, but it fits the work beautifully. The fibers let liquid escape, the layers hold their shape. The stack can be built by hand, judged by eye, and corrected before too much pressure is brought down. You scoop the olive paste and spread it carefully, neither too thick nor too thin. Too much paste in one mat will bulge and slip. Too little wastes the press's effort. Your palm hovers near the surface, feeling the unevenness without needing to touch every place. The paste glistens in the dim light, dark green, brown and purple, like something from earth and tree at once. We stay close to this small labor because it is the heart of the process. One basket after another receives its share. You smooth the edges so the paste doesn't squeeze out too soon. You leave enough openness for the oil and dark water to travel downward. It is not a tidy task, but it is exact in the old way, the way bread dough, clay, and wet wool are exact. In the 1870s, Athens has shops, ministries, schools, cafes, and new public ambitions. Yet a press like this still runs on touch. The city may speak of progress, and it does, but you can't hurry a fiber mat into understanding pressure. You have to stack it well. You have to keep your hands steady. You have to notice when one side rises higher than the other. The stack grows slowly beneath you. Mat, paste, mat, paste, mat, paste. Each one settling with a soft, wet sigh. The floor beneath the press is already dark from seasons of use. A clay jar waits nearby, and a shallow channel, cut or arranged for flow, will guide the liquid when the press begins to speak. Even the stains on the stone have a purpose. showing where the oil has traveled before. By late morning, the woven tower is ready, and the room becomes quieter, because everyone knows the next part asks for patience of a different kind. The press itself may be a screw press, a beam press, or a mixture of older wood and newer iron, depending on who owns it and what repairs the years have demanded. In this Athens olive press, the screw is the proudest piece, dark with grease and touched often. You set the stacked mats beneath it and check their center. If they lean too much, the whole day will complain. You bring the pressure down slowly. The first turn takes almost nothing. The next turn meets resistance. The wood creaks, the fibers compress, and somewhere inside the stack, the crushed olives begin to surrender. At first, only a dark shine appears around the lower mats. Then a thin stream forms, carrying oil, vegetable water, and tiny fragments into the waiting channel. This part feels almost too quiet for the change it brings. The olives have grown on trees for months, have been picked, hauled, sorted, crushed, and spread, and now their stored light comes out as a slow, cloudy flow. You watch it gather in the receiving vessel. It is not clear yet. Fresh oil is mingled with water and sediment, and it looks more like a promise than a finished thing. The odd ways of the 1870s Athens press are practical here. The pressure is increased in stages, not all at once. A sudden hard turn might burst the mats or force bitter solids through the weave. So you wait. You tighten, pause, listen, and tighten again. The press has a voice, and your job is to hear when it is asking for time. The room grows warmer with bodies and work. Someone shifts a jar with a dull scrape. A wooden door taps in the breeze. Outside, a seller passes along the road, and his call reaches the press house, softened by distance. You notice these things because pressing has intervals in it. Your hands are busy, then waiting, then busy again, and the waiting is not empty. We can imagine the small meal taken nearby, because work like this leaves oil on the fingers and hunger in the belly. Bread, olives from another jar, perhaps cheese, perhaps a little wine watered down. Nothing grand. You eat with the smell of fresh pressing still around you, and the taste of oil seems to belong to the air before it belongs to the mouth. As the sun climbs and the first pressing slows, the task moves towards separation, where patience becomes even finer and the cloudy liquid is left to reveal what it carries. The receiving jars in an Athens press are not merely containers, they are places of settling. You pour or ladle the dark mixture with care, and the liquid folds over itself, thick and green-brown at first. Oil is lighter than water, and given time, it rises. That simple fact is one of the quiet engines of the whole day, as dependable as gravity and as gentle as breath. You don't rush the jar, you let it stand. The heavier water and sediment sink lower, while the oil gathers above in a softer layer, warmer in color and smoother in motion. A lamp nearby shows the difference when the surface catches light. The upper layer gleams, the lower part stays murkier, holding the bitterness and weight of crushed fruit. There are odd little gestures here that fit because they come from long watching. Some workers use a shallow ladle, skimming oil from the top with a hand so steady it barely wrinkles the surface. Some use a spouted vessel, drawing from a level that keeps the worst sediment behind. In places where water is added, it is added with caution, because too much can carry away aroma, and too little may leave the paste clinging stubbornly to itself. You feel the cool side of the jar beneath your palm. Clay keeps its own temperature. It smells faintly of earth, cellar, and old harvests. The oil touching its inside will later be moved again, perhaps to amphora-like vessels, perhaps to tins or barrels, depending on the household, the buyer, and the small commerce of the city. For now, it rests. In the 1870s, Athens is modern enough to want measurements, accounts, and market prices, but old enough to trust a worker's eye. You judge the oil by color, smell, and feel. A clear greenish gold may please one buyer. A fuller, darker oil may suit a lamp or kitchen. Nothing here is abstract. Every quality has a use, and every use has a place in ordinary life. We stay with the jar because sleep itself understands settling. The day's trouble sinks when it is given time. The lighter part rises without being forced. Your breath can do the same, moving gently above the heavier thoughts, while the press house keeps its slow company around you. The room is not silent, but its sounds are soft enough to hold rest. By afternoon, the first jars have begun to separate, and the work returns to the pressed mats, where what remains still has value and nothing is wasted too quickly. The stack under the screw looks changed now, flattened and tired, with dark liquid shining between the layers. You ease the pressure back and lift the mats apart one by one. Each mat is heavier than it looks. It bends in your hands, warm from compression, smelling of oil, wet fiber, and the bitter heart of the olive. The paste inside has become a cake. In the Athens olive press of the 1870s, the first pressing is only part of the story. The remaining pulp may be broken up, dampened, warmed slightly, and pressed again for a lesser oil. This is not failure. It is thrift. A household, a soap maker, a lamp seller, or a workshop may all have use for grades of oil that would never sit proudly on a table. You crumble the pressed cake with a tool or your fingers, depending on its firmness. It breaks into dark clumps, grainy and fragrant. There is still oil in it, though less eager now. The texture feels stubborn, almost leathery in places. You spread it again, and the repeated work begins to feel like a low song, familiar from the morning but rougher at the edges. This second handling is one of those odd ways that actually fit the world around it. Athens is not a place where useful matter is casually thrown away. Olive pits can feed fires, pomace can go toward animals, fuel, or further extraction in humbler forms. Even wastewater, though harsh and dark, is handled with the knowledge that the press must live beside neighbors, wells, roads, and small gardens. The smell changes in the afternoon. It is less bright now, deeper and earthier, with smoke from the warming fire threading through it. Your sleeves carry the day. Your hands are slick no matter how often you wipe them. The floor has grown darker in paths where people have walked between stone, press, jar, and door. We can feel the fatigue arriving gently, not as hardship, but as the body's way of keeping account. Your shoulders know the screw. Your fingers know the mats. Your ears know which creak belongs to old wood, and which means something has shifted wrongly. By now, the work is no longer separate tasks. It is one continuous motion, and you are inside it. As the afternoon light lowers against the wall, the second pressing gives what it can, and the press house turns toward cleaning, storage, and the small order that makes tomorrow possible. Cleaning an olive press is never a shining, final thing. It is a practical kindness to the next batch. You scrape paste from the stone, gather fallen pulp from the floor, rinse tools where water is close, and hang mats so air can reach them. The smell of fresh oil begins to fade into the older scent of the building, the scent that was waiting when you arrived. You learn quickly that oil resists water. It slicks the bucket, floats in rainbow swirls, and stays under the nails. Ash, rough cloth, sand, and patience do more than splashing alone. You rub the paddle until its handle feels clean enough. You wipe the screw where paste has climbed. You clear the channel so tomorrow's oil won't have to find its way through yesterday's thick remains. In 1870s Athens, this kind of cleaning belongs to the same skill as pressing. A careless room spoils good fruit. A neglected mat turns sour. A jar with old residue can lend a stale taste to fresh oil, and no one wants the labor of groves and hands to end in a dull flavor. So you clean slowly, with respect for small causes and small consequences. Outside, the city sounds have changed. Carts move differently at this hour. Footsteps pass homeward. A church bell may carry across the roofs, thin and mellow in the cooling air. The press house holds the day's warmth longer than the street, and when you step near the doorway, the evening feels cool on your face and damp at the edges. The jars are checked again. Oil has risen more clearly now, and the surface lies calm. You skim what is ready, guiding the ladle just beneath the top, letting it fill without dipping too deep. The motion asks for a soft wrist. Too much haste clouds the layer. Too much hesitation trembles the hand. You find the middle pace, the one the oil allows. This is the quiet pleasure of the work. Not pride that shouts, and not triumph, but the simple feeling that a thing has moved from tree to table by honest steps. The odd press, the woven mats, the settling jars, the repeated turns, all fit because they answer the nature of olives. They do not argue with the fruit, they persuade it. When evening gathers in the corners, we turn with you toward the last duties of the press house, where accounts are murmured, tools are placed in reach, and the day loosens its hold. The owner or keeper of the press may mark the yield, perhaps by measure, perhaps by share, because many small presses work within arrangements as old as neighborhood trust. A grower brings fruit. The press takes a portion, or a fee, or some agreed part of the oil. In 1870s Athens, such dealings may be written down, but they also live in memory, reputation, and the careful watching of jars. You stand near the low table, your hands finally wiped, though still scented with oil. The figures are simple enough, but the day behind them is not. So many baskets of olives, so many pressings, so much clear oil, so much lower grade, so much pulp left for another use. The marks on the page are dry and small, while the work itself has been wet, heavy and fragrant. A lamp is lit before the room grows too dim. Its flame is fed by oil, not unlike what you have made. And this is one of the gentle circles of the press house. The work gives light to the work. The flame trembles against the clay jars and the old beams. Shadows gather behind the millstone, making it seem larger and older than it did in the morning. There may be talk now, low and ordinary. A question about tomorrow's olives. A remark about rain. A small laugh at a mule that refused a turn, or a mat that sagged like an old hat. Nothing needs to rise above the quiet. The day has had enough weight in it, and the evening asks only for soft voices and the placing of things where they belong. You carry the last cleaned basket to the stack. It scratches against the others and settles into place. The paddle leans against the wall. The screw is left eased, not bearing pressure through the night. The stone waits with a dull sheen along its edge. Even the floor, though stained and patched with darkness, has been swept into a kind of order. And as the lamp burns lower, the Athens olive press of the 1870s becomes less a workplace and more a resting room for tools, with the day's labor held quietly in clay. The air cools by degrees. You notice it first at your wrists, where the sleeves have been pushed back and the skin is still faintly sticky. Outside, Athens settles into evening, with its mix of old stones, new houses, dusty roads, and voices carrying from open doors. The press house does not close itself against the city. It simply grows quieter within it. The jars stand in a row, and each one holds a small record of the day. Oil near the top, water below. Fine sediment sinking with the slowness of dust in sunlit air. Tomorrow, some will be clearer. Later, some will be moved again. Tonight, they need nothing but stillness. And you have learned that stillness is also part of the work. We linger here because the end of such labor is not sharp. There is no grand finish. There is only less to do, then less, then only the lamp, the smell of oil, the clean tools, and the soft ache in your hands. Your body has been asked to repeat simple motions all day, and now it repeats a simpler one, breathing in, breathing out, while the room releases you. The odd ways that actually fit have shown themselves slowly. A rough basket fits the paste because liquid needs a path. A slow screw fits the mat because pressure needs patience. A settling jar fits the oil because lightness rises in its own time. And you, standing quietly among them, fit the work because you have listened more than you have forced. The door is drawn in, leaving a narrow seam of night. The last sounds from the road are softer now, and the lamp makes a small amber pool on the floor. The millstone rests, the mats hang, the jars keep their silence, and the Athens press house holds the scent of olives long after your hands have grown still. For a while, after the door is drawn in, the work still seems to move inside your hands. You can feel the screw turning even though it rests. You can feel the woven mats bending, the paste spreading, the smooth handle of the paddle settling into your palm. The body keeps a memory of useful motions, and in the quiet of the 1870s Athens olive press, that memory becomes almost as soft as sleep. The next morning comes with no sharp edge. It arrives as a grayness at the top of the door, as a cooler smell in the room, as the faint dampness of stone that has held night inside itself. You return, before the street has fully woken. The jars stand where you left them, and the oil has risen a little more cleanly, resting above the darker water like a calm thought held over a heavier one. You bend close to the nearest jar, and the scent is gentler than yesterday. The first green bite has softened into something rounder. It smells of fruit, leaf, clay, and the faint smoke that settled into your clothes. You lift the lamp nearer, and the surface answers with a low shine, not bright like polished metal, but deep like sunlight seen through old glass. In this Athens press, one of the oddest habits is simply waiting. From a distance, waiting can look like nothing at all. But you know better now. Waiting is a tool with no handle, and it belongs beside the millstone, the mats, the screw, and the ladle. Without it, oil stays troubled. With it, the layers find their places, and your work becomes lighter by doing less. You skim again, slowly enough that the ladle seems to float. The rim cuts beneath the top layer and gathers oil with hardly a shiver. A little sediment tries to rise, then settles back. You tilt the ladle into a clean vessel, hearing the soft pour, thicker than water and quieter than wine. The sound is small, but in the morning press house it fills the room. Outside, someone passes with a basket of bread, and the warm smell reaches you for a moment through the gap in the door. Athens is waking into its ordinary noise. Hooves, voices, hinges, and the scrape of shutters come one by one. Inside, your world is narrower and steadier. Clay jars, woven mats, old wood, and the patient surface of oil are enough for now. And as the morning opens, we move from the settled jars back toward the incoming olives, because the season does not finish in one day, and the press must learn each harvest by touch. The new olives are not exactly like yesterday's. Some are smaller, with skins still tight and green-black. Some have been bruised from the road, their flesh softer beneath your thumb. In the 1870s Athens olive press, this difference matters. The work may seem repetitive, and it is, but repetition here is never blind. Each load asks the same questions in a slightly different voice. You pour the olives into the sorting tray and hear them rattle with a dry, rounded sound. Leaves scatter among them, silver on one side and darker on the other. A twig snaps beneath your hand. A small stone, carried in from the grove, clicks against the wood and is set aside. The olives smell cooler today, more grassy, as if they came from higher ground or were picked before the sun reached them. We can notice the people around the fruit without losing your place in the work. A grower stands near the doorway, quiet with the care of someone who has watched these trees through the year. Another person waits with sacks still tied, glancing at the press, then at the jars, then at the sky. Everyone knows that weather, ripeness, and timing have had their say before the olives ever touched the floor. Your hands sort steadily. Good fruit to one side, spoiled fruit to another. Leaves and grit away from both. There is no need to make a ceremony of it. Yet the whole day rests on these small judgments, because a bitter branch, a moldy olive, or too much dust can move through the work and leave its trace in the oil. You guard against that with patient fingers. Athens in the 1870s is a city of many tempos. Government offices, new houses, workshops, markets, and cafes carry one tempo. The olive press carries another. It belongs to the groves outside the city as much as to the street where it stands. When you sort fruit here, you are also sorting weather, soil, family labor, mule travel, and the quiet anxieties of a harvest year. The odd ways fit because they make room for this variety. A large, rigid method would demand that every olive behave the same. Your press does not. It lets you adjust the grinding, the paste, the mat thickness, the pressure, and the weighting. It is old-fashioned, perhaps, but old-fashioned things can be subtle when they have been shaped by many hands. By the time the sorting tray is nearly clear, light has reached the far wall, and the millstone is ready for another slow turning. The first olives of the day fall into the bed of the stone with a muted patter. You guide them inward and set the turning in motion. At once the room changes. Whole fruit becomes broken fruit, and the clean morning smell grows green, damp and heavy. The stone moves with its usual patience, crushing skin, flesh and pit into a thickening paste that gathers in the circular track. You listen for the sound beneath the sound. The broad scrape of stone is always there, but each batch has its own answer. Drier olives chatter a little more. Softer olives slump quickly into paste. Fruit picked after rain may release water eagerly, while later fruit can seem to hold its oil with quiet stubbornness. Your ear learns these differences, though no one needs to name them grandly. The mule circles, and its harness makes a soft leather complaint with every turn. If a boy leads it, his steps fall lightly beside the animal's heavier ones. If you take the handle yourself, the pressure comes into your shoulder and along your ribs. The work is not harsh when paced well, but it is honest. It reminds the body of its own weight. We stay with the grinding because it is easy to hurry past in imagination. People think of oil as something poured, golden and finished. Here it begins as a mash under stone, a bitter fragrance, a dull shine on a wooden scraper. The beauty is not separate from the mess. It lives inside the pulp, the darkened floor, the sticky wrist, and the patient turn that makes the olives give way. In the Athens olive press, the millstone does not flatten everything into sameness at once. It persuades. You scrape, fold, and keep the paste moving, because the stone can only crush what comes beneath it. The tool in your hand gathers the stray edges back toward the center. Again and again, the circle receives what wandered, and the fruit is made ready for the press. After enough turning, the paste looks glossy and thick. It holds ridges for a moment where the scraper passes, then slowly softens back. The color changes with the fruit, but today it is deep brown green, threaded with purple skins and pale broken pits. You breathe it in, and the scent settles behind the eyes, earthy, sharp and warm. When the paste is ready, the room shifts toward the mats again, and your hands return to the careful spreading that makes pressure possible. The mats have dried since yesterday, though they never lose their old oil smell completely. You lift them from the hanging place and feel the stiffness at their edges. A quick flex loosens the fibers. The woven surface brushes your palms with a rough whisper. In the 1870s, Athens press. These mats are ordinary things, yet they decide how gracefully the oil will leave the paste. You lay the first mat flat and spread the crushed olives over it with a short wooden blade. The paste is soft at the center and thicker near the pits. You smooth it outward, leaving a margin that will keep the stack from spilling. The work asks for the eye of a baker and the hand of a plasterer. Evenness matters, but perfection is not the point. Another mat goes on top, then another layer of paste. The stack rises in calm increments. You check it from the side, lean close, and correct a bulge before it becomes trouble. This small adjustment is one of those things no machine can understand in quite the same way, because your hand responds to weight, slant, wetness, and memory all at once. The air inside the press house grows damp with crushed fruit. It catches in your throat, not unpleasantly, just thickly. You can smell the fiber mats warming as they receive the paste. You can smell clay, old smoke, wool clothing, leather straps, and the faint sourness from yesterday's pomace, swept aside, but not entirely gone. Workplaces keep layered scents the way books keep fingerprints. A grower watches you build the stack, but he does not interrupt. He may have opinions, and perhaps he will offer one later, quietly, because everyone has seen oil gained or lost in the stacking. Still, in this moment, the work belongs to your hands. You settle the mat, spread the paste, turn your wrist, and let the stack grow straight beneath the waiting screw. We can feel why the method has lasted. Each layer is thin enough to release liquid. Each mat supports the next. The pressure will travel downward, not as a blow, but as a steady persuasion. This is the odd logic of the old Athens press. And once you stand beside it long enough, it stops seeming odd at all. As midday approaches, the stack is complete, and the screw waits above it like a slow question ready to be answered. You set your hands to the turning bar and bring the screw down carefully. The first pressure only settles the stack. Fibers compress, paste shifts, and a faint wet line appears at the lowest edge. You pause, because the pause matters. It lets the layers find their places before the next turn. A hurried worker might force more quickly, but the oil would not thank him, and neither would the mats. The second turn is heavier. Your hands tighten, and your feet set themselves against the floor. Wood and iron murmur together. A dark liquid begins to run, first in drops, then in a thin stream. It carries the first expression of the paste, rich and cloudy, with a smell that is almost startling after the waiting. Fresh oil, olive water, crushed pit, and leaf all speak at once. In the 1870s Athens olive press, this first flow is watched closely. You bend nearer, not too near, and observe its color. If it runs too muddy, perhaps the paste was too fine, or the mats too burdened. If it runs grudgingly, perhaps the fruit was drier, or the pressure too timid. Such judgments come without drama. They are adjustments for the next batch, held quietly in the mind. A shallow channel carries the liquid toward the vessel. The channel has been worn smooth by many seasons, and its edges are darkened by oil that no cloth ever fully removes. You wipe a stray stream back into its path. The floor is always trying to collect what the jar should receive. Your work is partly to keep the room from taking its share. The grower's face softens a little when the flow steadies. You may not look directly at him, but you feel the shift in the room. Oil is relief made visible. It means the picking was not wasted, the sacks were worth bringing, and the groves have answered another year. No one says this aloud in such words. The stream says enough. You turn again, then wait. Turn, then wait. The screw makes patience physical. You can feel the stack resisting less as the liquid leaves it, and the bar travels farther with each effort. The room holds its breath in a gentle way, while the vessel below receives the thick, dark mixture in soft folds. By the time the sun has passed its highest place, the first pressing has slowed, and the work opens into the quiet interval where meals, talk, and small repairs share the same dusty light. You sit near the doorway because the air is fresher there. Your hands are washed as well as they can be, though the scent of olives remains in the lines of your fingers. Bread tears with a soft pull. A little cheese crumbles. The taste of the meal is plain and steady, and after hours of breathing oil, even water feels cool and clean. In this 1870s Athens olive press, the midday pause is not separate from labor. It gives the screw time to rest, the liquid time to settle, and the workers time to notice their own bodies. Your shoulders loosen. Your palms cool. The light moves across the threshold, and dust floats there slowly, as if it too has adopted the pace of the press. Someone speaks of a repair needed on the gear. Another mentions a grove where the fruit is late this year. You listen without needing to answer much. The conversation moves in practical circles, like the mule around the stone. Weather, yield, price, family, road, tools, and back again to weather. These are the matters that hold a season together. The city beyond the press continues in its own way. Athens is growing, but growth does not erase the older trades at once. A mason's hammer rings somewhere down the lane. A cart creaks under stone or firewood. A woman calls to a child. The Acropolis, if you glimpse it from certain streets, stands above it all with pale rock and old temples. But here your world remains closer to the ground. We can hold both scales softly. The ancient city and the modern kingdom. The new boulevards and the old mule path. The high marble and the sticky olive mat. In your work, history is not a grand speech. It is the hand that uses a Roman old idea, a Byzantine habit, an Ottoman-era tool, and a newly repaired iron screw without needing to separate them. After the bread is eaten and the last cup is set aside, the afternoon draws you back into motion, this time toward the lesser pressings and the patient uses of what remains. The pressed cakes are opened again, and they look dense, flattened and tired. You break them apart with the wooden blade, releasing a deeper smell from inside. It is less green now, more bitter and earthy, with a warmth that clings to the throat. The pulp crumbles under pressure, but some pieces resist, tough with skin and crushed pit. You take your time because the second life of the paste depends on being loosened well. A little warm water may be used carefully to help the remaining oil move. This is one of those practical choices that can look peculiar from the outside. Water and oil do not mix, yet water can help carry oil away from stubborn pulp, so long as you understand the balance. Too much water thins the work and steals warmth from the flavor. Enough water persuades what remains. In the Athens press, the second pressing is not treated with the same quiet excitement as the first, but it is not despised. It has its buyers and its uses. Lamps need oil. Soap makers need oil. Households need oil for pans, hinges, and small repairs. A lesser grade can still carry a household through evening, cleaning, mending, and cooking. You spread the loosened pulp again into mats that have already worked hard. Their fibers are darker now, and the edges sag more easily. You stack them with the same care, because humble oil still deserves orderly work. The screw comes down. The flow is slower, duller, and more reluctant, but it comes. The vessel receives it without judgment. The press house smells different during this second round. The bright fruit of morning has become something heavier, almost smoky, though the fire is small. The floor is slick in places. Your shoes find their known steps. You learn where the wood dips, where the channel narrows, where one jar must be nudged with the knee before it sits level. The room and your body have made an agreement. We can hear fatigue in the tools now. The screw creaks lower. The mats sigh when lifted. The mule's step is slower, and a hand rests briefly against its neck. You are tired too, but the tiredness is steady, not sharp. It is the tiredness of useful repetition, the kind that asks for supper and sleep rather than complaint. As the afternoon settles into a softer color, the second flow thins, and the attention turns towards storing, marking, and protecting what the day has brought out of the fruit. Oil does not become valuable only when it shines. It becomes valuable when it is kept well. You clean the mouth of a jar with a cloth, then pour the clearer oil into storage with slow care. The clay vessel waits, dry inside and cool to the touch. A funnel, if used, is simple and darkened by old service. The stream narrows, glows, and disappears into the jar with a soft, rounded sound. In 1870s Athens, storage is part craft and part household caution. Oil must be sheltered from too much air, heat, light, and dirt. The room where it rests should be steady, neither sunstruck nor foul. A stopper, cloth, or fitted cover keeps dust away. If the oil is meant for sale, its clarity and smell will matter. If it is meant for home, it still deserves respect. You wipe the outside of the vessel where oil has run down in a shining line. The cloth comes away fragrant. Your fingers slide over the curved clay, feeling small imperfections from the potter's hand. Nothing in the press house is perfectly smooth. Even the iron has dents, even the wood has knots, and even the cleanest jar carries the faint roughness that helps you hold it. A mark may be made on the jar or on a tally board. It might stand for a family, a quantity, a date in the spoken calendar of the season, or simply a place in the order of pressing. The marks are small because they are only doors into memory. Behind each one is a grove, a cart, a morning of sorting, a stone's turn, and a worker's careful ladle. The odd ways fit here too. Oil is not treated as one single thing. It has moments, grades, uses and futures. First oil for food, later oil for lamps or soap, sediment for settling, pomace for fuel or further work. Waste is narrowed wherever possible, not from romance, but from the plain knowledge that olives require a year, and a year should not be squandered. You move each vessel only as much as needed. Full jars are heavy and unforgiving. 2 hands are used when one might be tempted. A cloth under the base can help slide rather than lift. Your back thanks you for such small wisdom. The body learns economy in a press, because every needless motion steals from the strength that must last until dark. When the stored oil is covered and set in its place, the day turns toward the remains, the pomace, the pits, the dark water, and all the overlooked matter that still shapes the life of the press. The pomace is gathered into a corner or carried outside, depending on the arrangement of the place. It is heavy, damp and dark, and it smells sharply of crushed olives long after their best oil has gone. You lift it with a scoop or shovel, and it falls in clumps. Some of it may later dry enough to burn. Some may go into poorer extraction. Some may be taken away for uses that are ordinary and unglamorous. In the 1870s Athens olive press, the dark wastewater is treated with caution. It is bitter, staining and strong-smelling, and it does not belong near a clean well or garden bed without thought. You guide it away through a channel or collect what must be removed. The work is not pretty, but it is part of keeping the press accepted among houses, roads, and neighbors. We do not need to turn this into drama. It is simply the other side of making oil. Fruit gives oil, but it also gives water, pulp, pits, skins, and astringent darkness. Your job includes all of it. The same hands that skim the golden layer also clear the thick residue. There is a humility in that, and a kind of fairness too. The pits have their own dry promise. When separated or dried with the pomace, they can feed a fire with steady heat. A press that makes oil may also make warmth from what oil leaves behind. You notice how often one use leans into another. The lamp burns oil. The fire may burn pits. The tool handles are oiled to resist drying. The whole place seems to feed quietly on its own work. The smell near the waste corner is stronger, more bitter and sour, yet the open door keeps it from gathering too heavily. Evening air moves through, carrying a little dust and the distant scent of cooking fires. You pause for a breath there. The cold outside feels clean against your face, and then you return to the darker corner because the task is not finished. Your hands scrape, lift, rinse, and set aside. None of it is hurried, none of it is celebrated, yet without this part, tomorrow's pressing would begin in disorder. The odd pressways fit because they include cleaning as work, not as an afterthought. The old room survives by being restored in small measures every evening. As shadows lengthen across the threshold, the press house becomes a place of smaller sounds, and each tool asks to be returned to its familiar rest. The paddle is washed first, then stood where air can reach both sides. If left wet against the wall, it may sour or warp. You run your thumb along its edge and feel for splinters. The wood has darkened from years of olive paste, but it remains serviceable. A tool can look stained and still be clean enough for honest work. The press teaches that distinction without fuss. The mats require more patience. You rinse, beat, flex, and hang them, careful not to tear the woven fibers while clearing what paste you can. They drip slowly. Drops fall to the floor with a soft, uneven rhythm. Their smell fills the corner, grassy and bitter, like a grove after rain mixed with the inside of a cellar. Tomorrow, they will be used again, and so tonight, they must breathe. In an 1870s Athens olive press, a woven mat is both cheap and precious. It can be replaced more easily than a screw, but it holds the success of every pressing. A torn mat releases paste where liquid should pass. A foul mat spoils scent. A stiff mat resists stacking. So you handle it with the same respect you give heavier tools, because usefulness is not measured only by weight. The screw is wiped, especially where liquid has climbed or splashed. Grease and oil meet on the threads. Your cloth moves slowly around the dark spiral, and your fingers feel the ridges beneath it. This is the part of the press that turns effort into pressure. It is simple to look at, but it must be kept ready. A seized screw would stop the day as surely as an empty grove. The millstone rests with traces of paste along its track. You scrape the last of it inward and gather what can still be saved for lower use. The stone is then cleared, not polished, but freed from excess. Its surface is cool when you touch it. So much work has passed through it that the stone seems less like an object and more like a weathered companion. We remain with these tools because they hold the shape of the day after the people grow quiet. A workplace is a memory arranged in objects. The paddle remembers scraping, the mat remembers pressure, the jar remembers settling, the screw remembers patient force. You put each one back and the room begins to resemble itself again, ready for whatever fruit arrives with morning. When the tools are placed and the floor has been swept into rough order, the accounting of shares and measures returns, soft as murmured numbers near the lamp. A measuring vessel is filled, emptied, and filled again. Oil slides along its sides in a slow sheet, leaving a shine that catches lamplight. You hold it level because fairness in measure is part of the press's reputation. A little too much, a little too little, and talk begins. Not angry talk, perhaps, but the kind that travels from doorway to market and returns with extra weight. In 1870s Athens, trust is practical. The grower trusts the press to handle fruit honestly. The press trusts the grower to bring sound olives and accept the yield the season allows. A merchant may trust both, only as far as his nose, eye, and ledger permit. You stand inside that web of small trust with an oil-slick cloth in your hand, doing the plain thing carefully. The measures may be local, familiar, and sometimes confusing to outsiders. A vessel known by one household may not match another exactly. Newer official systems are spreading in many places, but older habits continue in workshops, yards, and markets. This too can seem odd, but it fits a world where trade is personal and where a known pot may carry more confidence than a printed rule. You pour, wait for the last thread to fall, and wipe the lip. The oil's surface trembles, then settles. The grower watches, not suspiciously, but attentively. His year is in those measures. Your day is in them too. The ledger receives its mark, and the vessel receives its cover. Small actions, repeated calmly, become the architecture of fairness. The lamp flame leans when the door opens. For a moment, cooler air moves over the table, carrying the smell of nightstone and distant supper fires. Someone steps in with a question about tomorrow's pressing. You answer, or listen, depending on your place. And the schedule forms itself from sacks waiting, fruit ripening, and the capacity of stone, mats, and tired hands. There is comfort in knowing tomorrow by its tasks. Sort the olives, crush them, spread the paste, press slowly, let the jars settle, Skim, store, clean, and begin again. The sequence is plain, but it does not feel empty. Each repetition holds enough variation to keep you awake while working, and enough rhythm to let the mind rest when night comes. As the last measures are marked, the press house loosens into evening once more, and the city beyond the door becomes a darker, cooler presence around the warm room. You step outside for a moment, and the air feels wide after the press house. Athens lies under the evening with its lamps, low voices, dogs in distant lanes, and the pale forms of stone where moonlight finds them. The day's oil smell follows you out in your sleeves. It seems to belong to you now, like smoke belongs to a baker or iron belongs to a smith. From the doorway, the press looks smaller and deeper. The millstone sits in shadow. The screw rises above the press bed, its shape caught by the lamp. Jars line the wall, rounded and quiet. The hanging mats drip less now. Each drop takes longer than the last. Time inside the room seems to thicken, as if it has absorbed the slow nature of oil. In the 1870s Athens olive press, night does not erase the work. It preserves it. The oil will continue settling while you sleep. The mats will dry. The remaining water will darken at the bottom of the jars. The pomace outside will cool. Everything continues, but gently, without demanding your hands for a few hours. We can stand here a little longer. The ground is uneven beneath your shoes. A mule shifts nearby, perhaps asleep on its feet, perhaps only resting in its own patient way. Somewhere, a gate closes. Somewhere a cup is set on a table. The world reduces itself to small sounds, and after a day of stone and pressure, small sounds feel like kindness. You return inside to lower the lamp a little. Not out, not yet, but lower. The flame shortens and steadies. Shadows climb the wall. The room gives back the warmth it stored, and the scent of oil settles closer to the floor. Your hands, though washed, still shine faintly where the skin has taken in the day. You rub thumb against forefinger and feel the slight slickness remain. The work is not finished forever. It is only finished enough. That is an old and useful distinction. A press house is never perfect at night, but it can be ready. The tools can be safe. The jars can be covered. The door can be set. The body can be allowed to leave what remains to stillness. And when the next day comes, it comes through the same doorway, with the same stones waiting, and with new olives that make the old routine begin again. Morning returns with a thin chill that makes the wood feel harder under your hand. You open the press house and breathe in yesterday's oil, quieter now beneath the smell of damp stone. The Athens street outside is still pale. A few early steps pass by. The first cart of olives has not yet arrived, and the room gives you a rare moment before its work fills it again. You check the jars first. That has become your way. Oil, water, sediment, each in its place. The top layer is clearer now, though not fully bright. You lean close and see the lamp's reflection, blurred but whole. With a careful ladle, you remove what can be taken without stirring the lower darkness. The motion is slower than pouring tea, softer than dipping from a well. In the 1870s Athens olive press, morning skimming has a different feeling from evening skimming. Evening is tired and practical. Morning is attentive and cool. The hand is steadier after sleep. The eyes notice fine changes, a faint film on the surface, a cloud near the side, a warmer color in one jar than another. These details begin the day before any olive is crushed. Soon the cart arrives. You hear it before the mule's nose appears at the door. The wheels creak under sacks, and the driver calls gently, not wanting to startle anyone into haste. The sacks are lowered one by one. Their cloth is dusty from the road and darkened in places where olives have pressed against it. You take the first knot and work it loose. The olives spill out with a sound like small stones softened by fruit. A few leaves flutter down after them. These are riper than yesterday's, darker and fuller, some nearly black with a bloom like dusk on their skins. They smell sweeter, less grassy, more mature. Your thumb finds softness under the skin, and you know the grinding will feel different today. We begin again, but not from emptiness. Every previous day has trained the hand for this one. You sort with yesterday's lessons still present. Remove the bruised fruit that has turned too far. Keep what will press well, and set aside what might sour the whole batch. Repetition is not a circle that traps you. Here it is a circle that teaches. As the darker olives are carried to the stone, the morning takes on a fuller scent, and the press house settles into a richer, slower version of its usual song. The millstone accepts the riper olives with less chatter. They break more readily, and the paste forms with a soft, wet heaviness. You guide it inward, feeling how quickly it spreads. The color is darker today, almost brown at the edges, with glints of purple skin. The smell is rounder too, fruitier and warmer, though still touched by the bitter green of leaves and pits. In the Athens press of the 1870s, ripeness asks for restraint. Softer fruit may give oil more easily, but it can also turn muddy if handled without care. You do not grind merely because the stone is turning. You watch the paste. You listen. You scrape just enough. The stone's patience must be matched by yours, or the batch will lose its clarity before it reaches the mats. The mule moves in its circle, and the harness creaks like an old door in a quiet house. Light comes through the high opening and catches dust above the stone. Your sleeves brush against the edge of the trough. The tool handle is cool at first, then warm where your hand holds it. The day's first sweat gathers beneath your collar. Not much, just enough to remind you that work has entered the body again. A man near the doorway says these olives came from a grove that catches afternoon sun. You can believe it. The paste has that stored warmth in it, though the fruit arrived cool. In such remarks, agriculture and craft meet without needing formal language. A slope, a wind, a week of dry weather, a late picking, all arrive in the press disguised as texture. We stay close to the stone until the paste is ready, because it would be easy to pass over the moment when fruit becomes material for pressing. Whole olives belong to the tree in the sack. Paste belongs to the press. It is the threshold substance, neither harvest nor oil, and your hands know its readiness by the drag of the scraper. When the darker paste has thickened enough, you carry it to the mats, and the room's attention narrows around the building of another careful stack. The first mat receives the paste with a soft slap. You spread it thinner than yesterday's batch, because this fruit is wetter and might squeeze outward if crowded. The edge must remain clean enough to hold. Your blade moves in a broad circle, then a smaller one, smoothing ridges and leveling hollows. The mat darkens as the oil-rich paste presses into its fibers. In the 1870s Athens olive press, no one needs a written chart to tell you this adjustment. The batch tells you. Wetter paste, thinner layers. Drier paste, perhaps a little more patience in grinding. Torn fiber, lighter stacking. Strong mats, firmer pressure. The method is a conversation, and the odd parts of it fit because they can answer back. You place the next mat and feel how it settles. A little paste rises at the side, and you wipe it back before it becomes a leak. The stack grows lower than yesterday's for the same amount of fruit because you are spreading more carefully. This means more rounds, perhaps, but fewer troubles under the screw. A slow day that runs smoothly can be better than a hurried day spent repairing mistakes. The air smells rich enough now that you can almost taste it. Olive fruit, damp fiber, clay, smoke, and the faint salt of human work all gather together. Your fingers are slick, your cuffs are stained. A bit of paste lands on your wrist, cool at first, then warm as it sits there. You wipe it away with the back of your other hand and continue. A child may be sent to carry a message or fetch a small thing. And for a moment, small feet cross the press floor with quick care. The room allows such interruptions without losing its rhythm. Workplaces like this are part of household and street life. They are not sealed away. They breathe with errands, questions meals and the turning seasons. By the time the stack is built, the darker fruit has made the mats heavy, and the screw must be brought down with even more patience than before. You lower the screw until it meets resistance, then stop. The pause seems longer today. The stack settles with a wet compression, and you watch its sides carefully. A darker line appears low between two mats. That is the beginning. You let it come. Then you turn again, only a little, allowing the flow to find the channel without bursting through the fibers. The first liquid from ripe fruit is thick and generous. It moves slowly, but with confidence, as if it has been waiting near the surface. The receiving vessel darkens quickly. Oil and water arrive together, clouded and fragrant. You smell more fruit in this batch, less leaf, though the bitterness remains underneath, keeping the scent from becoming too sweet. In the Athens olive press, this is a satisfying moment, but still a quiet one. No one celebrates loudly. The flow is watched, the stack is checked, and the screw is turned in measured intervals. The best response to a generous batch is not excitement, it is steadiness. You give the fruit the same care you would give a reluctant batch, because care is not reserved only for difficulty. The bar presses into your palms. You shift your grip and feel old smoothness where other hands have held it before you. The wood has absorbed sweat, oil, and time, until it has become almost satin in places. When you lean into it, you join a chain of workers who knew this same pressure without needing to write their names anywhere. The channel carries the liquid faithfully today. It glistens along the worn path, and you clear a small bit of paste from its edge with your finger wrapped in cloth. The vessel below gives off a rising scent. Fresh oil always changes the air around it. Even people busy elsewhere seem to notice, turning slightly, breathing in without comment. We can let this rhythm draw us down. Turn, wait, watch, breathe. The press works best when these actions do not fight one another. Your body learns the pace until the mind has room to drift among ordinary thoughts. The meal to come, the weather, the road, the feel of clean linen after washing, and then back again to the screw. As the ripe batch gives its first full measure, the jars begin to fill, and the afternoon's slower art of separation waits patiently nearby. Freshly pressed liquid is never as clear as memory makes it. It enters the jar troubled, carrying fine particles and dark water. You pour carefully anyway, because careful pouring now makes careful skimming later easier. The clay jar receives the mixture with a low gulping sound. Its sides remain cool. Your hand rests there a moment, feeling the faint movement inside. In an 1870s Athens press, some of the most delicate work happens after the strongest work is done. The crushing is heavy, the screw is heavy, the jars, when full, are heavy, yet the separation asks for lightness. A heavy hand can stir what should settle. A careless dip can cloud what had nearly cleared. So your body shifts from strength to gentleness without needing to leave the room. You set the jar where it will not be kicked, jarred, or warmed too much by the fire. Light touches it only from the side. A cloth is laid nearby. The ladle waits. For now, there is nothing to do but let oil obey its own nature. This restraint is part of the job, though it may not look like work to anyone passing quickly by the door. While the jar rests, you return to the press. The stack has flattened, and the flow has slowed. Another small turn brings out a little more. Then another pause. The screw stands firm above the mats, and the old wood carries pressure without complaint. You listen to the creak after your hand leaves the bar, because sometimes the press keeps speaking after the worker stops moving. The room has become warmer, and the smell of oil has layered itself onto everything. Your hair, your sleeves, your belt, the table, the wall near the press, all seem to hold it. In a few hours, outside air will make you notice it more sharply. For now, inside the work, it is simply the smell of where you are. There is a kind of companionship in these repeated tasks. We are not alone with an idea, but with materials that respond. The stone crushes, the mat holds, the screw presses, The jar settles, your hand guides each one, and each one guides your hand in return. So the whole day feels less like command and more like cooperation. When the ripe batch has yielded what it can under the first pressure, the mats are opened, and the afternoon enters its rougher, earthier labor again. The pressed paste from ripe olives is darker and softer than the cakes from earlier fruit. It pulls apart in heavy pieces, almost like damp soil mixed with crushed peel. You crumble it, and feel the grit of broken pits. The smell is strong now, sweet at first, then bitter at the back. It coats the air in the corner where the used mats are stacked. You prepare it for another pressing, but with a different expectation. The finest oil has already come away. What remains will be useful, not delicate. That is enough. In the Athens olive press of the 1870s, usefulness has many ranks, and none of them are without dignity. A lamp oil that burns steadily in a poor room matters in its own quiet way. Warm water is brought, perhaps from a kettle near the small fire. Steam rises faintly, carrying a mineral smell from the pot. You add it carefully to the broken pomace, turning and loosening the mass. It changes under your tool, becoming more pliable, less clumped. The water darkens quickly, drawing bitterness and remaining oil into motion. This is not refinement. It is patient recovery. The mats are filled again, and their old fibers darken with the second paste. You stack them lower this time. The press comes down. The flow is slower, rougher, and cloudier, but it still finds the channel. You watch it without disappointment. Not every stream needs to be golden. Some streams are meant for soap kettles, lamp bowls, hinges, and the unglamorous needs that keep houses alive. Your hands are tired now. When you flex them, the fingers feel thick. The skin along the thumb has softened from oil and water. A small scrape stings when touched by the bitter liquid. You notice it, then keep working. The body has many small complaints during a press day, but most of them pass through like sounds in the street. We stay with the second pressing because it reveals the moral of the craft without speaking it too loudly. Take what is good. Use what remains. Clean what must be cleaned. Do not demand that every part of the harvest become the same thing. The world is easier to rest in when each grade, each remnant, and each quiet use has its place. As evening begins to gather again, the second pressing slows, and the press house turns toward the little rituals that protect the night's stillness. The first ritual is clearing the channel. It has carried liquid all day, and paste clings to its edges. You wrap cloth around a small stick and draw it along the groove, lifting out dark residue. The smell is sharp there, concentrated and sour. Clean stone appears beneath the smear, not bright, but free enough. Tomorrow's oil will have a clearer path because of this small attention. Next, the vessels are set in order. First oil apart from second oil, settling jars apart from storage jars, wastewater away from what must remain clean. In the 1870s Athens olive press, space is not abundant, so order has to be made through habit. A jar moved to the wrong corner can cause a morning of confusion. A covered vessel prevents dust, flies, and careless elbows from undoing good work. You check the covers with your fingertips. Cloth lies flat. A stopper sits firm. A lid does not rock. These small tests are quiet enough to seem like nothing, but they let the room rest. A workplace sleeps better when its openings are closed, its liquids covered, and its tools relieved of strain. You know this in the body, the way you know a door has latched by its final sound. The mats hang like tired cloth circles, dripping less than before. Their shadows fall unevenly along the wall. The paddle stands near them. The screw is backed off. The millstone is cleared. Near the threshold, a little drift of leaves has gathered from the day's sorting. You sweep them into a pile and catch their dry scent as they move. Outside, the evening meal smells begin to rise from nearby houses. Onion, bread, smoke, and perhaps fish from the market come faintly through the open door. Inside, the press answers with olive, fiber, clay, and damp wood. These smells meet for a moment at the threshold, and the whole neighborhood feels woven from work and supper. You step around the room once more, not because you distrust your earlier work, but because the final round of looking is a comfort. A jar in place, a mat hanging, a tool leaning safely, the fire reduced, the floor passable, the door ready, each thing acknowledged, each thing allowed to be still. And as night settles over Athens, the press house quiets again, holding the day's oil in darkness while the city breathes around it. The next stretch of the season brings rain. You hear it before you open the door, tapping softly on roof tiles and making the street smell of wet dust. The press house feels colder in damp weather. The stone holds a chill. The mats dry more slowly. The olives arrive with leaves plastered to their sacks, and the mule shakes water from its coat near the entrance. In the 1870s Athens olive press, rain changes the work without stopping it. Wet sacks must be opened carefully. Fruit that has absorbed moisture may behave differently under the stone. Mud comes in on shoes, and the floor needs more attention. The air grows thick with damp fiber and cold oil. You keep the door open when you can, though the rain leans in and darkens the threshold. The olives today are dusty no longer. They are slick, cool and clean in some places, muddy in others. Sorting them makes your fingers cold. Leaves stick to your palms. A pebble hides among the fruit and announces itself with a hard click against the tray. You remove it and hear the rain continue its patient tapping, as steady as the mule's circle will be later. We do not hurry because rain already makes the world feel pressed closer. You sort more slowly, watching for fruit that has softened too much or begun to split. The smell is different, washed and green, with less road dust and more leaf. A damp sack lies nearby, heavy and sour from travel. It will need to dry before it can be folded away. When the olives reach the millstone, they crush into a wetter paste. The stone's sound is lower, more slippery. You scrape often to keep the paste from spreading too thin along the track. Water has made the fruit generous in one way and troublesome in another. This is the old bargain of weather. It gives and it asks. The press house seems smaller in rain. Outside sounds blur. The city becomes a soft background of wheels in mud, muted voices and water dripping from eaves. Inside, every near sound grows clearer. The scrape of your tool, the breath of the mule, the wet slap of paste on mat, the creak of the press, the drip from your sleeve onto the floor. As the rainy batch thickens under the stone, you make small adjustments again, because the odd ways of the old press fit weather as well as fruit. You spread the wet paste thinly on the mats, giving it space. Too thick, and it will slide. Too close to the edge, and pressure will push it out in dark tongues. The fibers accept it, but they are already damp from the air, less thirsty than on dry days. You feel this with your palm. The mat bends differently. It has lost some of its crispness. In the Athens press, a rainy day teaches patience through resistance. Nothing dries quickly. The floor grows slick. Cloths become heavy. The fire must be tended enough to warm water or help the room breathe, but not so much that smoke settles into everything. You keep moving, but with smaller steps, placing each foot where you know the stone is less slippery. The screw comes down on the rainy stack with caution. Liquid appears quickly, but not all liquid is oil. Much of it is olive water, dark and bitter, eager to run. The first stream is clouded and loose. You watch for the oil within it, knowing the jar will have more separating to do. The work shifts some of its burden from pressing to settling. This is another reason waiting matters. A hurried eye might see only a poor flow. A patient worker sees a mixture that needs time. Oil is still there, lighter and quieter, waiting to rise through the darker water. So you collect it, set it aside, and trust the jar to finish what the screw began. The jar has no pride, but it has excellent patience. Rain taps, drips, and softens the edges of the day. You pause near the doorway and feel cool air on your damp face. The street outside glistens. A wheel leaves a dark track. Someone lifts a cloak higher and passes quickly, head bowed. You return to the press house, where the work is slower and warmer, and where the smell of crushed olives rises despite the wet weather. We can feel how the old methods bend without breaking. They do not demand dry air, perfect fruit, or identical batches. They ask you to notice, then adjust, a little thinner, a little slower, a longer settling, a warmer rinse. The wisdom is not hidden in one clever device. It is spread through many modest choices. By late afternoon, the rain has eased, and the press house is full of damp warmth, wet mats and jars that will need a long, quiet night. The jars from the rainy batch look darker at the bottom and cloudier above. You set them where no one will disturb them. The oil will rise, but slowly. The clay walls glisten faintly where damp hands have touched them. A cloth cover is placed loosely enough to let warmth escape, tightly enough to keep dust away. Even a cover has to be judged. In 1870s Athens, not every household can afford to be careless with a rainy pressing. The yield may be less clear, the grade different, the patience longer. Still, the oil matters. It may not be the finest table oil, but it will feed lamps, pans, and trade. Rain does not cancel need. It only changes the path by which need is met. You hang the mats nearer the moving air, turning them after a while so damp does not stay trapped in their folds. Your fingers work along the edges, freeing bits of paste. The fiber smells strong in the wet weather, almost like rope left near the sea, though the sea itself is only a distant thought beyond the city and the port roads. The room feels older when damp, as if every stain has darkened into memory. The millstone must be cleaned with extra care. Wet paste hides in the groove and clings beneath the scraper. You bend close, working by lamplight, and see small flecks of olive skin shining on the stone. Your back aches a little. Rainy days do that. They make the body work against softness, against slipping, against damp cloth and reluctant drying. A small fire helps. It gives a low warmth, and the smoke finds its way upward, leaving a faint smell in the rafters. You hold your hands near it for a moment, not long enough to stop working, just long enough to feel the fingers return. The skin is wrinkled from wetness and oil. You rub the palms together, then go back to the jars. We linger with this damp evening, because it carries a different calm from dry days. Dry weather gives clean edges, dust, and quick sounds. Rain gives muffled streets, heavier air, and slower settling. Both belong to the season. Both pass through your hands. The press does not need the world to be one way in order to do its work. When the rain finally stops, the silence after it feels broad, and the last drops from the eaves mark time while you set the room to rest. The following day smells washed. The street outside has patches of drying mud, and the sky holds a pale brightness behind thin cloud. You arrive to find the rainy jars transformed by the night. Not fully clear, but more orderly. Oil has gathered above the dark water, and the top layer catches the morning light with a subdued green glow. You smile inwardly, because the jar has done its slow work. You skim with unusual care. Rainy oil asks for a soft hand. The ladle enters at a shallow angle, and you lift only what is ready. A little cloud follows, then falls away. You pour the gathered oil into another vessel, leaving it to settle again. This double patience can feel excessive to someone outside the work, but in the 1870s Athens olive press, it is simply how a troubled batch is made useful. The smell is cleaner than expected, not as bright as dry fruit perhaps, but steady. You breathe it in and note the difference without judgment. Oil carries the story of its making, and this one carries rain. It may suit certain cooking or lamps, or a buyer who values price over fragrance. No harvest gives one single answer. The press helps sort those answers without scolding any of them. New fruit arrives later, and the day resumes. Sacks are opened, olives sorted, stones turned, mats filled. The cycle begins to feel almost like weather itself, changing and returning, changing and returning. You find that your mind no longer reaches ahead to the end. It rests more easily in the current task. A tray of olives is enough when the tray is before you. We can move through several days this way, because the season is made from repetition. One day is dry and sharp, another is rainy and slow. One batch is fragrant enough to sweeten the whole room. Another is stubborn, yielding little and leaving heavy cakes behind. Through all of it, your hands keep learning the same lesson in different forms. The Athens press continues to fit because it is not a single rigid invention. It is a set of related habits, sort carefully, crush by feel, stack by judgment, press by stages, settle with patience, separate by gentleness, clean thoroughly. These ways are odd only if you expect work to obey drawings more than materials. Here, the material has always had a voice. As the days pass, the press house gathers the season into its walls, and every surface begins to carry a deeper shine of use. The wooden handles darken first. Your palm leaves oil, and oil draws dust, and the cloth can remove only part of it. The result is not filth, exactly, but the polish of repeated labor. The paddle's grip becomes smoother. The turning bar gleams where hands lean. Even the edge of the sorting tray takes on a rubbed softness where olives and fingers pass every day. In the 1870s Athens olive press, the floor tells the season most plainly. Near the millstone, there are flecks of paste and scuffed arcs from turning feet. Near the press, the stone is darker, fed by years of spills. Near the jars, circular marks show where vessels have stood. You sweep and rinse, but you do not erase the work. A working floor is a record written in stains. The air changes too. Early in the season, the scent of crushed olives arrives sharply each morning. Later, it seems already present before any fruit is opened. Oil has entered the beams, mats, ropes, and cloths. It is in your cuffs and perhaps in your hair. When you leave, someone outside may know where you have been before you say a word. This might sound heavy, but inside the rhythm it becomes comforting. A bakery smells of bread before dawn. A tannery smells of hides. A printer smells of ink. Your press smells of olives, clay, damp fiber, and the low smoke of a careful fire. The scent tells you the place is itself. It welcomes you by being unchanged. You learn the small map of the room in dimness. 3 steps from door to sorting tray. 4 from tray to stone. A turn around the low spot in the floor. A careful shift near the jar that sits slightly proud because its base is uneven. Your body moves through these facts without asking your mind each time. That is one of the comforts of repeated work. We can feel sleep waiting in such knowledge. Not sleep during the task, but the kind that comes afterward, when the body has spent itself on motions it understands. The mind does not have to solve the world at night. It can return to the known path between door, stone, press, jar, and back again. And as the season deepens, another part of the work appears more clearly, the quiet care given to people who bring their fruit and wait for the press to make sense of their year. A family may arrive with sacks tied carefully, their harvest smaller than others but no less watched over. You help unload without making much of it. The olives are spread, and the sorting begins. In the Athens olive press, the size of the batch changes the tempo of the room. A large grower fills the day with quantity. A small household fills it with attention. The smaller batches often carry more conversation. Someone remembers which trees bore well. Someone speaks of a branch broken by wind. Someone wonders if the fruit was picked too early or too late. You listen while your hands sort. The press becomes a place where the year is quietly interpreted, not by scholars, but by people who have touched leaves, ladders, sacks, and soil. You notice pride that does not announce itself loudly. A woman may watch the first flow with her arms folded beneath her shawl. A man may lean closer when the oil begins to gather. then step back as if not wanting to seem too eager. A child may ask whether all that dark liquid will become the bright oil used at home. The answer is yes, but slowly. In the 1870s, Athens is changing quickly enough that many people feel the pull of new things. Yet the olive press keeps one of the older forms of public patience. People wait together. They smell one another's harvests. They compare yields. They judge tools and weather. News passes through, but softly, because the press's own rhythm discourages hurried talk. Your work among them remains steady. You do not turn the screw faster because someone is anxious. You do not skim too deeply because someone wants to see more oil at once. The craft protects people from their own impatience. It gives them something better than speed. It gives them a process that can be trusted, precisely because it cannot be bullied. The small household's oil rises in the jar, a modest layer, but clear enough to please them. You skim it into their vessel, and the surface glows in the lamplight. The child leans nearer and is warned gently not to touch. You wipe the jar's lip, set the cover, and feel the quiet relief pass through the group like a warmer current. As that family carries its share away, the press house settles back into its broader rhythm, and your attention returns to the tools that make the same welcome for the next arrival. There are days when the screw needs tending. You notice a roughness in its turn, a hesitation where the thread should travel smoothly. In the Athens olive press, you do not ignore such a thing. A small resistance today can become a stopped press tomorrow, so you clear the work around it, wipe away old grease and oil, and examine the dark spiral by touch and lamplight. The iron is cool under your fingers. It smells faintly metallic beneath the olive scent. A bit of grit has lodged where pressure gathers, and you ease it away with a cloth and a narrow tool. The work is delicate, though the part is strong. Iron, like people, can be worn down by small things repeated in the wrong place. Removing the grit feels like giving the press a breath. A smith may be called for larger troubles, but much of the daily tending belongs to you. Tighten a wedge, oil a moving place, check a pin, replace a worn rope before it snaps. In the 1870s, repairs often happen in layers. A new iron piece may sit beside old wood. A local fix may serve for years if it respects the force moving through it. We can notice the beauty of such mixed tools without making them grand. They are practical objects, adapted by need. A press can carry the marks of several generations of repair, each one saying, in its modest way, that the work was worth continuing. Nothing is replaced merely for appearance. If it holds, turns, presses, and cleans, it stays. You work grease into the screw thread and turn it slowly, without a stack beneath. The movement improves. The creak softens. Your hand feels the difference before your ear confirms it. There is satisfaction in this, a quiet maintenance pleasure, like sharpening a knife or smoothing a warped drawer. The tool returns to willingness. Outside, the season waits. Sacks remain near the door. Someone clears the sorting tray. The repair has paused the pressing, but not broken the day. When the screw moves smoothly again, you set the next stack beneath it and bring pressure down with renewed trust, feeling the old machine accept the work once more. By late afternoon, after repair and pressing have folded together, the room carries a special calm, the calm that follows a problem noticed early and answered without fuss. The oil from that batch is not remarkable in quantity, but it feels earned. You watch it run with a little extra tenderness, knowing the screw's roughness could have made the day harder. The channel glistens, the jar receives, the mats flatten evenly. Everything returns to the ordinary, and ordinary feels especially welcome after even a small uncertainty. In the 1870s Athens olive press, the ordinary is the true subject, not a single grand invention, but the repeated saving of usefulness from wear, weather, haste and waste. You see this everywhere once you know how to look. A patched mat, a repaired handle, a jar mended at the rim, a floor groove deepened by years of liquid. Each imperfection is an accommodation with time. Your hands move more gently as evening nears. Fatigue makes wasteful strength impossible, and that can be a teacher too. You lift only what needs lifting. You scrape with the angle that works best. You let gravity help the pour. You rest the ladle against the jar's lip before tipping. The body learns economy, and economy has its own grace. The grower whose olives are being pressed may not see all these tiny efficiencies. That is all right. Much of good work remains invisible when it goes well. No spilled stack, no torn mat, no seized screw, no clouded jar, no sour tool left dirty overnight. These absences are achievements, though no one names them at supper. We stay in the soft absence of trouble for a while. The room hums with low conversation, the mule rests. A cloth hangs over a jar. The fire makes one small sound as a bit of wood shifts. The press has returned to its rhythm, and your breathing seems to follow it without instruction. When the final stack of the day has been pressed and opened, the remaining cakes are carried aside, and the press house begins once more to shed its labor into evening order. The cakes from the last batch are firm and dark, with a faint sheen where oil still clings. You lift them from the mats and set them with the rest of the pomace. They fall heavily, breaking at the edges. The smell is deep now, less like fruit and more like earth after use. This pile will not be wasted quickly. It will dry, be moved, perhaps burned, perhaps worked again, depending on need. In Athens, where households count fuel and light carefully, even such remnants matter. You understand this as you scrape the last bits from the mat. A person who has never worked a press might look only at the bright oil and forget the darker heap beside it. But the heap belongs to the same story. It is the shadow of the oil, and even shadows can warm a room when dried and burned. You rinse your hands in water that clouds at once. Oil floats on top in thin, shifting colors. Your fingers rub against each other, slick and rough at the same time. A cloth helps. Ash helps. Time helps most. The smell will remain, and perhaps that is fine. It is the smell of the day's usefulness, carried away from the press like a quiet token. The floor receives its evening sweep. Leaves, grit, bits of paste and broken fibers gather before the broom. The broom's sound is gentle, a dry hush moving across stone. You guide the pile toward the door, careful not to spread oil farther. The final cleaning is never perfect, but it restores enough order for morning to begin without resentment. A lamp is brought closer to the storage jars. You inspect the covers again. One cloth is damp and must be changed. Another has slipped at the edge. You correct them, then stand back. The jars look almost like sleeping animals in the dimness, rounded, still, and full of something gathered from many trees, many hands, and many hours. We can let the room slow us now. The press has spoken all day in creaks, drips, scrapes, and pours. At night it speaks by resting. The tools do not vanish into silence. They wait with the weight of work held inside them, and you wait too, feeling your own tiredness settle from the shoulders downward. As the lamp is lowered and the doorway darkens, the season continues beyond this single evening, carrying you toward colder mornings and heavier batches yet to come. Those colder mornings arrive with a clearer edge to the air. The press house seems to hold its breath before you open it, and the iron parts feel sharper under your fingers. Outside, Athens is pale and quiet, with smoke beginning to lift from household fires and the road hard beneath the wheels of early carts. Inside, the old olive smell waits in the dark, deepened by weeks of work. You bring in the first light and see how the room has changed with the season. The mats hang drier now, but stiffer. The clay jars feel colder at their bases. The millstone gives back no warmth when you touch it. In the 1870s, Athens olive press, winter does not stop the work, but it makes every beginning slower. as if the room itself must be persuaded to wake. The olives arriving now are often darker, heavier, and softer from ripening. Some have traveled in cool air from groves that stand silver and quiet after harvest. When the sacks are opened, the fruit smells rich and faintly winey, with a deeper sweetness beneath the green. You sort more carefully, because softer fruit can bruise into sourness if neglected, and the press must not carry one spoiled handful through the whole batch. Your fingers are cold at first. They move through olives, leaves, and grit with the practiced rhythm of someone who no longer has to think about each small choice. A leaf sticks to the back of your hand. A wrinkled olive rolls aside. A good one drops into the measure with a small, round sound. The work warms you gradually, not by flame, but by use. We can feel the morning widen as the sorting continues. A cart outside shifts and creaks. Someone stamps feet against the cold. A voice asks softly when the pressing may begin. You answer without haste, because the fruit will not be helped by impatience. The tray must be cleared well, the stone must be ready, and the mats must be made flexible enough to do their part. As the first winter batch reaches the millstone, the press house gathers its familiar motion, and the colder air begins to fill with the dark scent of late olives. The stone crushes late fruit differently. The olives break with less crispness and more yielding weight, becoming paste sooner, though not always better. You guide the mass inward with the scraper, keeping the stone from riding over slick clumps. The sound is low and thick. It seems to come from the stone's belly, rather than its surface. Warmth rises from the paste, or seems to, because the smell is so full. In an 1870s Athens olive press, a late batch asks you to watch for heaviness. Too much grinding can make the paste dull. Too little leaves oil locked within the fruit. The line is not fixed. You find it by sight and smell, by the drag on the wooden blade, by the way the paste gathers and releases as the stone turns. This is knowledge held in the wrist. The mule's breath shows faintly near the doorway when cold air enters. Its hooves make a duller sound today, as if the floor has grown denser overnight. Leather straps creak, and the wooden frame answers with its old dry voice. You step close to the stone, then back, then close again, keeping the paste in the path of pressure. The work has the slow grace of tending a fire. There are moments when the room feels ancient, though Athens around it is changing. The stone turning over olives could belong to many centuries. The screw, the repaired iron, the newer vessels, and the talk of markets belong more closely to your own time. Yet the fruit itself ignores such divisions. It asks only to be crushed well, pressed carefully, and left to settle. You smell a faint bitterness from the pits today. The scraper finds them broken into pale shards inside the darker paste. You do not mind this, so long as it stays balanced. Olive oil is not meant to be merely sweet. Its character lives in leaf, skin, stone, and flesh together. The press draws those parts into one liquid, then lets time soften their argument. When the paste has grown glossy and heavy, you draw it away from the stone, and the winter batch moves toward the mats with a weight that asks for special care. The mats are stiff in the cold, so you flex each one before filling it. The fibers crackle softly, then loosen. You may bring them closer to the small fire for a moment, not to heat them strongly, but to take the harshness out of the morning chill. They smell of old oil as they warm, and the scent rises gently, like a memory being opened. You spread the paste in layers that are neither too thick nor too eager. Late olives can slide if stacked carelessly. Their paste is heavy and soft, and pressure will find any weak place in the tower. Your blade moves slowly, shaping the layer, smoothing the edge, leaving the center even around the opening. In the Athens press, a good stack looks calm before it ever meets the screw. Someone nearby may be talking about the price of oil in the market. You hear only parts of it. Your attention remains with the mat beneath your hand. The talk belongs to later. The layer belongs to now. If the paste bulges, the press will not care what the price was supposed to be. It will only push where the stack allows it. We can notice how much humility this work demands. The press will not flatter you. The oil will not rise because you wish it. The mats will not hold because you are tired. Everything answers the action placed before it. This could feel severe in another kind of story, but here it feels restful because the requirements are plain and the feedback is honest. The stack rises in dark, fragrant layers. Your hands are no longer cold. Oil has warmed them, and work has brought blood into the fingers. A little paste clings beneath a nail. A smear crosses the back of your wrist. The smell has settled into your clothes again, stronger than smoke and softer than tar. A smell that belongs to winter harvest and long rooms. By the time the stack is built, the light through the door has strengthened, and the screw waits above the late fruit with its patient downward force. You bring the screw down until the first resistance meets your hands. The stack compresses slowly, more slowly than it did with wetter fruit, because the paste is dense. A low creak moves through the frame. You pause. The mats settle. A dark shine appears at the base, but the flow does not begin at once. Late olives can be generous and stubborn at the same time. The next turn asks more from your shoulders. You lean with care, not jerking, but steadily giving the bar your weight. The screw advances, and the first liquid gathers. It is thick, clouded, and richly scented. It moves down the channel in a narrow line, as though reluctant to leave the pressed stack. The jar receives it with a soft sound that reminds you how full the day may become. In the 1870s Athens olive press, pressure is never only force. It is timing, patience, and listening. If you force too hard, the stack may shift, and paste will squeeze out in rough seams. If you wait too long, the day slows beyond usefulness. So you stand inside that balance, tightening, pausing, and watching the first flow deepen. The room seems to grow warmer as the oil appears. People lean closer without crowding. The scent is darker than earlier batches, with more body, more fruit, and a faint peppery sharpness that touches the nose. Someone may say this will be good oil. No one answers too quickly. The jar will have its say after settling, and taste will have its say after that. You watch the stream because it teaches you. A smooth, steady line means the stack is holding. A sudden, muddy surge means trouble inside. A clear slowing may mean the first pressure has done its part. These signs are ordinary, yet they keep the work alive. Your eyes travel from screw to mat, to channel to jar, again and again, in an unhurried round. We can let the pressure settle into our own breathing. The press descends by turns, not all at once. The oil comes in threads, drops, and small flows. Nothing leaps, nothing bursts when the worker is careful. The whole room is arranged around gradualness, and gradualness is a generous thing to hear at night. As the heavy batch gives its first oil, the morning's work becomes midday's waiting, and the jars begin their quiet labor beside the wall. The liquid from late fruit often settles with a dense lower layer. You can see it soon after pouring, the heavier part darkening toward the bottom, while the oil above takes on a warmer glow. It is cloudy still, but promising. You set the jar where the floor is level. A slight tilt can make skimming awkward later, and a little forethought saves a great deal of careful handwork. In an Athens olive press of the 1870s, the placement of jars is almost a craft of its own. Heavy vessels must be close enough to the press to receive, far enough not to be struck, shaded enough to rest, and ordered enough that no batch is confused with another. You learn which corner keeps coolest. You learn where the afternoon sun reaches. You learn which jar has a foot that rocks. You slide a small wedge beneath one vessel, just enough to steady it. The clay scrapes softly against stone. Oil inside trembles, then grows still again. Your hand remains on the rim until the movement quiets. It is a small courtesy to the liquid, and perhaps also to yourself. You do not let the day become careless, merely because there is much to do. At midday, Bread appears again, along with olives from an earlier season, perhaps firmer and saltier than the fruit you are pressing now. You eat near the door, and the contrast is pleasant. The olives in your mouth are finished food. The olives in the room are becoming oil. The same tree has many ways of feeding people, and each one asks its own patience. The talk at the door turns to winter roads. Mud in one place, dry stone in another, a mule reluctant on a slope, a wheel repaired with a borrowed pin. You listen while rubbing warmth back into your fingers. Work travels before it reaches the press. Every sack has already crossed distance, weather, and small trouble. The press is only the visible middle of a longer chain. When the meal is done, you return to the jar and see that a faint upper layer has begun to define itself. It is not ready, but it has begun. This is enough. A great deal of the work is knowing when enough has happened for the moment, and when the next action should wait its turn. By early afternoon, the heavy stack has flattened under the screw, and the room moves into the second handling of late fruit, rougher and slower than before. The mats are opened with care, because the compressed paste clings to them. You pull one back and hear a wet tearing sound as the cake releases. The pulp is dark, dense, and still fragrant. It holds warmth from pressure and from the room. You break it apart with the blade, and the pieces crumble unevenly, some soft, some tough with crushed pit. In the 1870s, Athens olive press, late pomace can still be rich. You do not assume it is finished because the first pressing has slowed. You loosen it, turn it, and decide how much help it needs. A little warm water may be added, or the mass may be worked more thoroughly before returning to the mats. The choice depends on feel, and feel depends on attention. The fire is tended low. Too much smoke would thicken the room unpleasantly, but a little warmth helps cold hands, stiff mats, and stubborn pulp. The kettle gives off a small breath of steam. The smell of warmed olive cake is deeper than fresh paste, almost toasted, though still damp and bitter. It is a smell of use continuing after the finest part has gone. You stack the remade mats lower, because second pressings benefit from less ambition. The screw comes down, the frame creaks, and a darker stream appears. It carries less promise for the table, more for lamps and other needs. Still, you guide it cleanly. The channel does not know which oil is admired and which is humble. It only asks to be kept clear. Your body has learned to shift from strong work to delicate work and back again. One moment you lean into the bar with measured weight. The next, you steady a jar with 2 fingers so the stream falls true. Then you scrape paste, lift a mat, wipe a spill, and check the fire. These changes are quiet, but they keep the mind from dulling completely inside repetition. We remain with the lesser oil because it belongs to the honest fullness of the process. A household cannot live on best things alone. It lives on useful things, sufficient things, second things given a place. The press does not shame what is lower grade. It separates, stores, and sends it toward the work it can do. As the second pressing runs its course, the afternoon light grows thinner, and the press house turns toward the care of jars that will sit through another cold night. The jars from the morning's first pressing now show their layers more clearly. You take the lamp and bring it near, though daylight remains. The surface gleams dull gold with a green cast. Beneath it, the darker water rests like shadow. Between them lies a clouded border, the place where patience is still working. You do not disturb that border unless you must. Skimming late oil is slow work. The ladle must enter almost flat, gather the top, and rise without dipping into the murk below. Your hand steadies against the jar's rim. The clay is cool. A faint smell comes up, rich and green, with a bitter note that feels clean rather than harsh. You pour into a waiting vessel, and the oil folds thickly, making a sound more felt than heard. In Athens, oil is everywhere in ordinary life, yet when you skim it by hand, it stops being ordinary for a while. It becomes the result of every step you remember. The tree, the sack, The sorting tray, the millstone, the mat, the screw, the jar, the ladle. A clear pour contains them all, though the buyer may only see a measure and a price. You wipe the ladle between jars. Mixing grades carelessly would blur the work you have done. Some oil deserves one vessel, some another, and some must wait longer before anyone decides. This sorting after pressing is quieter than sorting olives, but it is just as real. The fruit has changed form, yet it still asks to be understood. Outside, the colder afternoon brings people sooner toward home. The street sounds thin out. A bell travels across the city, softened by walls and distance. The press house answers with its own inner sounds. Cloth rubbing clay, drops falling from a mat, a low murmur near the ledger, and the occasional creak as the old wood settles after pressure. You feel the day lowering through your shoulders. The work has not been dramatic. It has been exacting in its plainness. That is often how useful labor feels. It asks again and again for attention to something small enough that no one would sing of it, and large enough that neglect would spoil the whole. When the last skimming of the afternoon is set aside, the room turns toward cleaning again, and the tools wait in their familiar order to be rinsed, wiped, and relieved. The winter cleaning begins with warmth if you can get it. Cold water alone makes the oil stiff and your fingers clumsy. You bring a little warm water to the paddle, the blade, and the smaller vessels, not wasting it, but using enough to loosen the slick film. The water clouds, then shines with floating oil. You tip it away where it belongs, keeping the clean corner clean. In the 1870s Athens olive press, the line between clean and unclean is practical rather than polished. A tool need not look new. It needs to be free from sour paste, grit, and old residue that would harm the next batch. You rub along the handle, around the blade, into the shallow notch where pulp likes to hide. The cloth comes away dark. You rinse and rub again. The mats are more difficult in cold weather. They resist your hands, stiffening as soon as warmth leaves them. You bend them gently, never sharply, because broken fibers invite trouble. Paste works itself into the weave, and you loosen it with thumb, water, and patience. Drops fall to the floor. The smell rising from them is bitter and green, like the day condensed into liquid. A person passing the doorway might see only tedious work now. The oil has been pressed, so why fuss over mats? But you know tomorrow's oil is already being protected. A sour mat is a hidden thief. It steals brightness before the fruit has a chance. So you clean by lamplight, slow and thorough, while the city's evening grows around you. The screw is wiped last, or nearly last, because it holds the memory of pressure. Old oil and grit collect along the threads. You turn it a little as you clean, exposing what the cloth could not reach. The iron catches lamplight in dull lines. It smells of grease beneath the olive scent. Your fingers are tired, but the movement is careful. We can feel the room growing orderly by degrees. Not clean like a parlor, not empty like a room unused, but orderly like a workshop prepared for return. That is a restful kind of order. Nothing is pretending not to have worked. Everything is simply placed where tomorrow can find it. As the night deepens, the jars are covered, the mats hang in the cool air, and the press house keeps the slow warmth of the day inside its walls. There are days later in the season when the press must begin before dawn. The fruit is gathered, the waiting list has grown, and the colder air preserves the olives but does not pause their ripening forever. You arrive with the stars still faint above Athens. The street is quiet enough that your own steps sound separate from the city. The key or latch is cold in your hand. Inside, darkness has weight. You light the lamp and watch the room appear piece by piece. First the table, then the jars, then the hanging mats, then the stone. Shadows pull back from the screw and settle in corners. The air smells still and oily, with a faint sourness from covered waste and a steadier scent from the stored jars. It is not unpleasant. It is simply the room, telling the truth about its work. You begin by checking what's settled overnight. Even before new olives arrive, yesterday asks for attention. A jar that was cloudy at dusk has cleared enough for another careful skim. A lower vessel needs moving. One cover has dampened and must be changed. These tasks are quiet and nearly private, done before the day's voices enter. In the Athens olive press of the 1870s, dawn work has a special intimacy. The city has not yet filled the air with errands. The press seems to belong only to you and the few who arrive early. The lamp flame makes the oil look deeper than daylight does, and the ladle's movement seems slower in the half-dark. Even the smallest pour sounds round and close. The first sacks arrive while the sky is still colorless. They are carried in by people who speak low because morning has not fully opened. The olives are cold enough to make your fingers ache. Leaves crackle softly among them. You sort by lamplight and touch, trusting the familiar shapes. Good fruit has one feel. Damaged fruit has another. Stones and twigs announce themselves by hardness. We can hear the city waking gradually around the press. A rooster from some nearby yard. A cart farther off. A door opening. A woman's voice. Then silence again. The millstone waits until there is enough light and enough fruit ready. Nothing begins with a shout. The whole morning comes forward in layers, like oil rising in a jar. When the stone finally turns, dawn has reached the doorway, and the press house enters the long work of a crowded winter day. A crowded day does not mean a hurried day, though it can tempt people toward haste. The sacks stand in a row, and each one represents someone waiting. You can feel that pressure in the room before the screw touches anything. Still, the olives must be sorted. The stone must turn. The paste must be judged. The mats must be stacked straight. The old sequence protects the work from the impatience gathered around it. In 1870s Athens, a busy press is also a social room. People come and go. Some remain to watch their fruit. Others leave a relative in charge. Questions drift through the air. How much did the last batch yield? Whether the rain harmed the groves, whether a repaired road toward the city has made transport easier. You hear these things while your hands keep their rhythm. The millstone runs for longer stretches on such days. The mule circles until it must rest, and then another arrangement is made. The sound of grinding becomes almost constant, a low, wet turning beneath voices and footsteps. Paste is scraped, gathered, carried away, and replaced by fresh fruit. Your shoulders feel the day lengthening before midday arrives. The sensory world grows dense. Crushed olive scent rises in waves. Dust from sacks mixes with dampness from paste. Leather warms under harness. Clay jars cool the palms. The floor grows slick in the known places, and you step around them without looking. The fire adds a thread of smoke when warm water is needed. The room is full, but its rhythm remains low. You build stack after stack. Each one has a slight difference. One is darker, one is wetter. One leans and must be corrected. One presses beautifully, giving a steady first flow that brings a soft murmur from those watching. Another resists, and you accept the slower yield without letting frustration sharpen the room. We stay beside you through the busy day, because this is where craft proves itself most quietly. Anyone can be patient when there is little to do. The harder patience is the one that holds when others are waiting, when the floor is crowded, when the hands are tired, and when every shortcut whispers that it might save time. You do not answer the whisper. By midday, the press house is warm from bodies and work, and the meal is taken in small turns rather than one full pause. You eat standing near the doorway, one hand around bread, the other still smelling of oil. A few bites are enough before you return to the mats. Someone else takes a turn resting. The day does not stop, but it softens at the edges for each worker in passing. The bread tastes of smoke from the room and dust from your fingers, though the hunger makes it welcome. In the Athens olive press, Meals on crowded days are folded into the labor-like cloth folded between jars. A cup is shared, then set aside. Cheese is wrapped again. Someone wipes a knife on bread rather than cloth because oil is everywhere already. A joke is spoken too quietly to disturb the work. The mule rests with lowered head, and for a few minutes the stone is silent. Silence after long grinding feels large. You hear dripping from the mats. You hear liquid settling in a vessel. You hear a cart outside shift under its load. Your own breathing seems louder. Then the stone begins again, and the familiar low sound returns like a blanket drawn over the room. The day continues. The afternoon batches are often harder because fatigue has entered the hands. You must watch your grip. A tired hand spreads paste unevenly. A tired eye misses a leaf or a stone. A tired shoulder may turn the screw too sharply to be done with it. So you slow yourself inside the busyness, keeping the motion deliberate, letting each task have its full, small measure of attention. We can notice how calming that deliberate pace becomes, even under pressure. It is not laziness, it is steadiness. The work teaches that haste is not the same as speed. A steady worker may finish more cleanly than a hurried one, because he does not spend the afternoon correcting the morning's mistakes. You learn this with every straight stack and every clear channel. As the crowded afternoon wears on, the press house becomes a place of overlapping times, with one batch sorting, one batch pressing, one batch settling, and yesterday's oil still waiting for its final clarity. The room must be organized almost like a quiet dance. Fresh olives near the tray, paste near the mats, pressed liquid near the settling wall, cleared oil near storage, pomace away from clean vessels. If one part crosses carelessly into another, confusion begins. You keep these paths open with your body, moving jars, clearing tools, and reminding others gently where to stand. In an 1870s Athens olive press, there may be no painted lines on the floor, but the room has invisible ones. Everyone who works there knows them. Do not crowd the press bed. Do not step over the channel unless you must. Do not touch a jar that is settling. Do not place dirty cloth near clean oil. The rules are quiet because they have been learned by use. The afternoon light comes through the doorway at a low angle, touching the floating dust and the edges of jars. Oil in one vessel glows briefly, then dulls as someone passes. The millstone turns in partial shadow. The screw descends again. Voices grow softer as people tire. Waiting is easier when the body understands that no louder voice will make oil rise faster. You skim a jar that has rested since morning. The layer is still faintly clouded, but ready enough for a first transfer. Your ladle moves at the surface while a man watches from 2 steps away. He holds his breath without realizing it. You keep yours even. The oil lifts, pours, and gathers in the clean vessel with a warm green shine. This is the reward of the busy day, not in a triumphant sense, but in a small resolving sense. The steps have worked. Fruit has become oil. People who arrived with sacks will leave with vessels. The press has carried many anxieties into a manageable form. One measure, one jar, one covered mouth at a time. Even then, the work continues. A stack must be opened. Mats must be refilled. The late batch under the stone needs scraping. The fire wants a small piece of wood. You pass from one need to another, and the room holds together because enough hands know the rhythm. When evening finally begins to press at the doorway, the crowded day enters its long descent, and every unfinished thing asks for calm attention. The last arrivals are told whether their olives can be pressed tonight or must wait until morning. This is a delicate kind of honesty. Fruit should not sit too long, but hands and tools have limits. In Athens of the 1870s, where people often know one another by sight or family, such decisions matter. You speak plainly and gently. because frustration grows less when it is given a true shape. The final batch accepted for the day is carried to the stone. It may not be the finest fruit, but it receives the same sequence. Sort, crush, spread, stack, press. The room is dimmer now, and the lamp must help with details. Shadows make the paste look darker. The sound of grinding feels lower after so many hours, almost as if the stone itself is tired. Your hands are slow but steady. You scrape the paste inward. You spread it with care. The mats are damp from repeated use, so you choose the soundest ones. A worn mat is set aside rather than risk a tear under pressure. Such choices cost moments, but save trouble. The old pressways fit because they are willing to take the moment that prevents the spill. The screw descends on the last stack, and the first flow begins under lamplight. Oil at night has a different appearance. It looks darker, more secret, and the lamp flame trembles in its surface. The channel shines like a narrow road. Drops fall into the receiving vessel with an intimate sound, and the crowded room grows quiet enough to hear them. We can feel how the day has narrowed again. Morning was full of arrivals. Midday was full of voices. Afternoon was full of overlapping tasks. Now there is mostly the last pressing, the lamp, the tired hands, and the knowledge that cleaning still waits. The work does not ask whether you are ready for that. It simply leaves the next task in front of you. When the last flow thins and the screw is eased, the room releases a breath, and the crowded day becomes a cleaning day once more. The mats from the final pressing are opened slowly, because tired hands can tear what rested hands would free. You peel each one back, scrape the cake, and stack the used fiber apart. The pomace pile is larger than usual tonight. It smells strong, bitter, and warm. You will not finish every possible use of it now. You will only put it where it can wait without spoiling the room. In the 1870s, Athens olive press, cleaning after a crowded day is almost another shift. The floor is darker. The channels are thicker with residue. Cloths are saturated. The sorting tray holds leaves, stems, and dust from many groves. Jars stand in several stages of settling and storage, each one needing to be left undisturbed, covered, or marked. Your eye moves from one to the next. You begin where spoilage would begin. Paste left in mats, pulp trapped in channels, dirty vessels near clean oil, warm residue in corners. The prettiness of the room can wait. Hygiene, though the word may not be used in the modern way here, is understood through smell, sourness, and experience. A bad odor tomorrow would be a failure tonight. Warm water is rationed through the worst of it. The cloth grows slick. You rinse, wring, rub, and rinse again. Your fingers protest when cold water follows warm. The lamp throws your shadow long across the floor. Someone else sweeps near the door, gathering leaves that whisper dryly even after a day of damp paste. The contrast is oddly soothing. The screw is backed off and wiped. The bar is set where no one will stumble into it. The millstones bed is cleared enough to rest. You do not polish away the season. You remove what would turn sour. The difference matters, and by now you feel it instinctively. A press house at night should smell worked, not neglected. We can let this careful cleaning become slow again, even after the hurry of the crowded day. The paste drops. Voices become murmurs. A final jar is shifted by two people instead of one. The cover is placed. The lamp is lowered. Each completed task removes one small weight from the room. As the last cloth is wrung and hung to dry, the press house stands tired but orderly, and the night outside seems cooler than it was before. You step to the doorway and feel cold air move over your face, your throat, and the damp cuffs at your wrists. The city is mostly dark now, though lamps remain in windows and along certain streets. Athens sounds farther away at night. A late cart passes. A door closes. Somewhere, voices rise briefly, then fade. Behind you, the press house holds a deeper silence than the street. In the 1870s, Athens' olive press. A crowded day leaves traces that cannot all be removed. The smell is stronger, the floor holds fresh stains. The jars are more numerous along the wall. The pomace heap has grown. The mats hang low and dark. Yet the room is ready enough, and ready enough is a merciful phrase after work that began before dawn. Your body is no longer asking to work. It is asking to stop. The hands are swollen slightly from oil, water, and pressure. The shoulders are heavy. The feet know every stone in the floor by soreness. You notice these things with a calm kind of distance, because fatigue after orderly work does not need much explanation. It is simply there, like the lamp, like the jars. We can stand in that fatigue without making it hard. The day was long, but it moved through known steps. The tools answered. The oil came. The people waited, watched, took their measures and went home. The press did what a press is meant to do. In a world that often feels larger than any hand can shape, there is comfort in a room where effort still meets material directly. Before leaving, you check the settling jars one last time. Not to skim, not now, but to be sure they are safe from being knocked or chilled too sharply. A cloth is adjusted. A lid is centered. The lamp glows on rounded clay, and the faint sheen of oil at the rim of a vessel. The sight is enough. Then the door is drawn in, and the press house rests again, though the oil inside continues its slow upward work through the dark. The morning after a crowded day is not easier, but it is quieter at first. You arrive with the memory of yesterday in your arms and back. The press house smells dense when opened, and cool air enters like water into a jar. The first task is to look at what the night has clarified. The jars stand in their rows, holding yesterday's labor in separated layers. You bring the lamp close to the first vessel. The oil has risen well. Its upper surface is smooth, with tiny points of light where the flame touches it. Beneath, the darker water waits. You begin the slow skimming, hand steady despite soreness. In the 1870s Athens olive press, the morning after hard work often reveals whether yesterday's patience was sufficient. The first ladleful is beautiful in its way, not because it is pure like glass, but because it is clear enough to show the care beneath it. You pour it into a clean vessel and watch it fold into itself. The stream is thick, quiet, and green gold under the lamp. A little scent rises, and it is gentler than the smell of pressing, more settled, more composed. Jar by jar, you repeat the motion. Some need more time. You leave them alone. Some yield a clean upper layer. You take it. The work is almost meditative, though still exact. Your shoulder may ache, but the wrist remains light. Skimming is one of the press house's gentlest tasks, and one of its easiest to spoil with impatience. Outside, the street has not yet become busy. You hear a broom somewhere, a low voice, a mule's bridle, a shutter lifted. Athens begins again, in fragments. Inside, yesterday becomes oil by degrees. You are present for that transformation, not as an audience, but as the worker whose steady hand allows it to finish. We can feel how time overlaps in this room. Today's fruit may soon arrive, but yesterday's oil is not done. Pomace from several days waits outside. Mats cleaned last night are still drying. A repair from last week holds the screw steady. The press is never only in one day. It is a braid of many days, all moving through your hands. As the skimming continues, the first new sacks appear at the threshold, and the quiet morning begins to make room for another round of fruit. The incoming olives are fewer this time, and the room does not become crowded at once. That is a relief. You can sort them with more space around your elbows. The fruit is mixed, some dark, some still green at the shoulder, perhaps gathered from trees that ripen unevenly. The smell is lively after the settled jars, sharper and more immediate, like the grove has entered the room again. In the 1870s Athens olive press, mixed fruit makes mixed decisions. You remove the poorest olives, but you do not separate every shade as if arranging jewels. This is working oil, not a museum display. The batch will have its own character, and your task is to help it become the best version of what it is. That phrase might be too modern, but the old hands would understand the feeling. The millstone begins again, and the room changes from storage to making. Whole fruit rolls under stone, paste gathers, the scraper moves, the mule steps. The old sounds return, softer than yesterday, because the batch is smaller. You can hear individual olives crack in the first turns, then lose themselves in the thicker murmur of the paste. Your body is grateful for the lighter morning. The arms still work, but they are not driven from task to task. You have time to look at the paste properly. It is brighter than yesterday's late fruit, more green along the edges. The smell wakes the room. Even the mats seem less tired when you lift them from the line and prepare the first stack. A smaller batch lets the craft show its fine details. You spread with more attention to the outer edge. You adjust one mat twice because it does not sit cleanly. You wipe the spindle area before stacking higher. These little refinements might be impossible on a crowded day, but today they return, and with them comes the quiet pleasure of unhurried competence. We can rest inside this slower work. The press does not always strain. Some days it moves with room to breathe. The sequence is the same, but the air around it is wider. You notice the light on the jar, the warmth of the paddle handle, the faint dust on a leaf, the small sigh a mat makes when laid flat. By midday, the modest batch is under pressure, and the first flow comes gently, fitting the quieter character of the day. The screw descends without much complaint. The stack is even, and the liquid appears cleanly at the lower edge. It runs in a narrow, steady line, not abundant, but pleasing. The jar receives it with a soft trickle. You watch for signs of trouble and find none. Sometimes a good day is simply one in which nothing resists beyond its nature. In Athens, such a batch may not be remembered by anyone else. It will not be discussed in the market. No one will speak of remarkable yield or difficult fruit. Yet for you, it has its own quiet value. The stack held. The channel stayed clear. The oil smelled clean. The mats did their work. A plain success can be more restful than a dramatic one. You use the waiting interval to mend a mat edge. A few fibers have loosened, and if ignored, they may open under pressure later. You sit near the light and work them back with patient fingers, tying or tucking as the material allows. The mat scratches your skin. It smells of oil and damp straw. Outside, a cart passes slowly, its wheels sounding tired in the street. The repair is small enough that someone might not call it repair at all. But the press house depends on such small keeping. A mat edge today, a handle tomorrow, a wedge under a jar, a channel cleared before paste hardens. Maintenance is not a separate event here. It is woven through the day like fiber through the mat itself. We can hear the press still working while your hands mend. The screw holds pressure. A drop falls. Another follows. The liquid in the receiving vessel rises by a little. Time is not empty while you do one task beside another. The room is full of slow processes that continue without needing to be watched every second. When the flow has weakened, you set the repaired mat aside for later use, and the modest batch moves from first pressing toward the rougher work of opening and remaking the cakes. The cakes from this batch are well formed. They release from the mats cleanly, leaving less paste behind. That is satisfying. You break them apart and see the texture inside, grainy, dark, and evenly pressed. The smell is fresh enough that a second pressing may still be worthwhile. You decide to work it once more, but not heavily. The fruit has given much of itself already. In the 1870s Athens olive press, decisions like this are part economy and part experience. Too much effort for too little yield wastes labor, fuel, and time. Too little effort leaves value unused. There is no perfect rule. You judge by quantity, texture, smell, and the day's remaining tasks. The old method fits because it leaves room for judgment. A little warm water is mixed in, and the pomace loosens. You spread it thinner than before, stack it low, and press gently. The second stream is dark but not unpleasant. it will have a use. The receiving vessel is marked differently. Your hand makes the distinction almost automatically now. First oil, second oil, cloudy oil, settled oil to wait, oil to move. The room stays calm through this work. There are fewer voices today, fewer waiting bodies. The mule rests longer between turns. A shaft of afternoon light reaches the floor and shows the broom marks from morning. Dust floats there, then disappears when someone passes. The press house feels almost domestic in the quiet, though its floor is stained and its tools are heavy. You take a little extra time with the jars. The older ones are checked. One has cleared enough for transfer. Another must wait another day. You clean the rim of a storage vessel before pouring. The cloth makes a soft rubbing sound against clay. Oil slides into its new place, and the vessel seems to grow heavier with purpose. By late afternoon, the lighter day begins to close, not with exhaustion, but with the gentle completeness of tasks done before darkness forces them. You clean earlier than usual. This is one of the gifts of a modest batch. The mats are rinsed while there is still light. The paddle is wiped before paste dries hard. The channel is cleared before the residue thickens. The sorting tray is turned and brushed outside, releasing leaves that scatter briefly in the air before settling near the door. In the Athens olive press, such an early cleaning feels almost luxurious. You can see what you are doing without bringing the lamp close. You can hang the mats with space between them. You can check the floor for slick places and cover the jars without haste. The room seems to appreciate it, though of course rooms do not feel as people do. Still, a well-kept workspace gives back calm. The smells separate as the air clears. Fresh paste fades. Warm clay remains. The mats smell grassy and bitter where they hang. The storage corner smells deeper and smoother, with oil that has begun to rest. The waste corner is swept and bearable. Near the doorway, cool evening air brings in a trace of dust, smoke, and something cooking with herbs nearby. You stand near the millstone and wipe the scraper one last time. The stone's curve is familiar now in a way that feels almost personal. You know where it chips slightly. You know where paste likes to gather. You know the sound it makes when the fruit is too dry, too wet, or just right. The stone has no intention, yet it has become part of your daily understanding. We can stay in this quieter end of day without trying to make it final. The season continues. More sacks will come. More jars will settle. More mats will darken, fray, be cleaned, and return to service. But tonight, the room is ready early, and that gives the body a little space to notice its own ease. As the light softens and the lamp is lit only for checking, not for heavy work, another kind of duty appears, the watching of stored oil as it begins to become trade. The stored oil is not all kept for the same person. Some belongs to growers. Some may be the press's share. Some is destined for kitchens, lamps, merchants, or makers of soap. In the 1870s, Athens olive press, oil leaves in many directions, and each direction asks for a different care. A jar for household use may be accepted with friendly familiarity. A merchant's vessel may be inspected with sharper eyes. You wipe the outside of a storage jar and check its seal. The oil inside must travel, perhaps only across a neighborhood, perhaps toward a market, perhaps farther along roads that lead beyond Athens. Travel is another kind of testing. A poorly covered vessel can leak. A poorly settled oil can throw sediment. A careless carrier can undo the calm of several days. A buyer arrives near evening, quiet, businesslike, with a vessel of his own and a nose trained by use. He smells the oil, perhaps tastes a little from the surface, rolling it with the seriousness of someone judging not luxury, but livelihood. You watch without intrusion. The oil's color pleases him enough. Its scent is clean enough. The measure is agreed. The transfer is careful. Vessel to measure, measure to vessel. Cloth ready for the rim. Oil pours in a thick ribbon. catching lamplight briefly before it disappears into the darker mouth of the container. You hold steady until the last thread falls. Then you wipe, cover, and step back. A small transaction, but a real one. Work has become something that can leave the room. We can notice that nothing in this moment needs to be loud. Commerce here is not a bell ringing over a grand exchange. It is a vessel filled in a dim press house, a mark in a ledger, a nod, a hand resting on a jar to feel its fullness. The city's needs pass through such moments quietly all the time. After the buyer leaves, the room feels slightly larger. One jar has gone, or one vessel has emptied into another. Space opens where weight used to be. You sweep the place where it stood, because even absence leaves a ring of dust and oil on the floor. As evening deepens, the press house returns to its waiting posture, with fewer vessels along the wall and more fruit expected before the week is done. The week's later batches include olives from a stonier grove. You hear about the place before the sacks are opened. Thin soil, older trees, wind from the hills, fruit smaller but often strong in flavor. When the olives spill into the tray, they prove the story partly true. They are firm, dark green to black, and less plump than the late winter fruit. Their smell is sharper, leafier, almost austere. In the Athens olive press of the 1870s, fruit from different groves carries place into the room. You may never visit that stony slope, but you meet it in the tray. The olives roll differently under your hand. The leaves are smaller. The dust caught in the sack is pale and gritty. A few tiny stones have traveled with the harvest, and you remove them with care. The grinding is slower for this fruit. The stone breaks it firmly, but the paste does not become soft at once. It remains granular longer, with a brighter smell that fills the nose. You scrape and turn, letting the stone do enough work without overdoing it. These olives may give less oil, but perhaps a stronger one. Not every valuable thing is abundant. The mule circles in steady patience. Outside, the day is dry and bright. Sunlight enters at an angle and makes the dust above the stone visible. Your tool moves through paste that resists, then begins to yield. The sound under the stone has a faint crackle from harder pits. You listen, adjust, and keep the paste gathered. We can feel the stony grove through these small signs. The press house is not cut off from land. It is an interpreter of land. Soil, slope, rain, sun, harvest timing, and the hands that pick the fruit all arrive hidden inside olives, and the press brings them into scent, texture, flow, and yield. Your work is to receive those differences without forcing them flat. When the paste is finally ready, it is firmer than the last batch, and the mats must be filled in a way that gives the oil enough path to escape. You spread the firmer paste a little thicker than the rainy batch, because it will hold its shape. The blade leaves ridges that stay longer before softening. You smooth them carefully, knowing that unevenness can create channels where pressure escapes. The matte fibers receive the paste without sagging much. This batch feels orderly, almost disciplined, from the first layer onward. In the 1870s, Athens press, such differences keep the worker attentive. The same hand motion cannot be repeated blindly. A firm paste asks for one thickness. A wet paste asks for another. A soft late paste asks for gentler pressure. A gritty early paste asks for more grinding. The old system survives because it is adjustable in quiet ways. The stack rises straight and compact. You check it from two sides. A small lean is corrected with the next mat. A paste ridge is pressed inward before it can become a seam. You take pride in this without making much of it. Pride in work like this is not a raised voice. It is the calm satisfaction of seeing the stack sit true. The screw meets the firm stack with a clearer resistance. You turn and pause. The first flow is slow, then it gathers, thin and bright, with less water than rainy fruit and less heavy darkness than the late batch. The smell rising from the channel is sharp, green, and lively. Someone nearby lifts his head slightly, noticing it. You do not force more than the stack is ready to give. Firm fruit can punish impatience by holding tighter or pushing paste unevenly. So you increase pressure in stages, watching the mats flatten with dignity. The liquid gathers in the vessel, not in abundance, but with a clean look that pleases the eye. Sometimes a smaller yield carries a finer character. As the Stony Grove oil begins to settle, the press house takes on a fresher scent, and the day's work feels lighter despite the careful attention it requires. The jar holding this batch shows a thinner layer of dark water beneath the oil. You notice that with interest, then set it aside. It may clear well. It may be prized by someone who likes a sharper taste. You cannot decide everything now. The oil must rest first. Again and again the press teaches you to let early impressions remain unfinished. In Athens, where trade, household use, and habit all shape judgment, taste is practical. Some want oil mild for cooking, some want it stronger for bread or greens. Some care most that it burns well, some need the lesser grades for soap or work. The press does not impose one ideal. It sorts the harvest into possible lives. You skim an older jar while the stony batch rests. The ladle moves under a settled surface, lifting oil that is now clearer than when first pressed. It gleams warmly, and the smell has relaxed. You pour it into storage and hear the soft body of it strike the vessel below. The sound is almost like cloth being folded, if cloth could pour. Your hands know how to move between new and old. Fresh paste, settled oil, dirty mat, clean jar, rough pomace, smooth measure. The room contains all stages at once, and your attention travels among them without confusion. This is not because the work is simple. It is because the pattern has entered you deeply enough that each object calls for its next proper action. We can rest in that pattern again. The press house is full of modest transformations. Hard fruit softens, paste yields, liquid separates, cloudiness clears, waste dries, tools dirty and are cleaned, hands tire and recover. None of this asks to surprise us. It asks only to be followed, and following can be a deeply soothing thing. By afternoon, the Stony Grove cakes are opened for their second use, and their dry firmness gives the next task a slower, rougher texture. The cakes break apart more like coarse meal than damp soil. Crushed pitch shows clearly, pale against the darker pulp. The smell is sharp and less sweet. You add warm water with a cautious hand, because the dry mass can drink more than expected. It darkens as you turn it, loosening from stubborn crumbs into a workable paste. Steam rises faintly and carries a toasted olive scent. In the 1870s Athens olive press, dry pomace has uses beyond immediate pressing. It can be dried more fully and burned, or sent along for rougher extraction. But today there is enough left to press again. You decide by touch, seeing how the warmed pulp begins to gleam. The second oil will be modest, but likely clean enough for practical uses. The remade stack is lower and rougher. The mats hold it without much sagging. The screw descends, and the flow comes slowly, dark and narrow. You could almost miss it if not watching. But you are watching, because the humble stream matters too. It drops into the vessel, small measure by small measure, and the press house accepts the slow yield without complaint. A dry wind moves dust along the street outside. It enters when the door opens and settles lightly on the threshold. You cover the clean vessels more carefully. Dust is always waiting for a chance to join what should remain clear. The cloth covers stir, then lie still again. The jar mouths vanish beneath them like faces under sleep. Your throat feels dry from the day's sharper air. You drink water and taste olive bitterness still lingering in your mouth. It seems to live there during the season, faint but constant. Even plain water passes through it. This is part of the work too, the way a trade follows the worker beyond the exact movement of the hands. As the dry batch finishes, you begin cleaning before dusk, and the old room gathers another day into its walls. The mats from the dry batch are easier to clear in some ways and harder in others. Less wet paste clings to them, but more gritty particles lodge in the weave. You flex, shake, rinse, and rub the fibers with your thumb. Small bits fall away. The mat smells less sour than rainy ones, more dusty and bitter. It dries faster too, which is a blessing in the cool season. In the Athens olive press, even drying is part of planning. Mats that dry well can be used sooner. Mats that remain damp too long invite sourness. You hang them with space between, considering the evening air, the warmth of the wall, and whether the fire will be lit again. These are quiet calculations, made without chalk or paper. The millstone's groove holds gritty paste, and you scrape it thoroughly. Harder fruit leaves more small fragments. You do not want them carrying into tomorrow's softer batch. The stone's surface is cool against your knuckles. Your tool makes a steady rasp, low and rhythmic. It is not unpleasant. Cleaning has its own music, simpler than grinding and less demanding than pressing. A neighbor pauses at the doorway to ask whether a small batch can be brought in the morning. You listen, answer, and glance at the space near the sorting tray. Yes, perhaps, if it arrives early. The press calendar is partly formal and partly negotiated by memory, urgency, and room. The season is a cue made of fruit, weather, relationships, and the limits of daylight. We stay in this practical softness because it is the real atmosphere of the place. Nothing floats away into abstraction. Every thought has a tool, a jar, a sack, a time, or a person attached to it. That groundedness is what makes the press house peaceful. The world becomes touchable here, one task at a time. When the neighbor leaves and the last grit is cleared from the stone, evening enters gently, and the room grows ready for another night of settling. The stored oils now make a small geography along the wall. Earlier batches, later batches, first pressings, second pressings, clearer jars, troubled jars, oil promised to one family, oil awaiting a buyer. You move among them with the lamp, reading their surfaces. The light travels over clay and oil, over cloth covers and chalk marks, over the dark floor where your shadow bends. In an 1870s Athens olive press, this quiet inspection is a kind of night watch. Not dramatic, not fearful, just attentive. A cover has shifted. A vessel sweats with coolness. A jar near the doorway might be too exposed if the night grows cold. You adjust what needs adjusting. Your hand rests on clay after moving it, making sure it is stable. The oil itself seems asleep, though it is changing. Fine sediment sinks. Tiny bubbles vanish. Clouded layers clarify. The room is full of things happening too slowly to watch directly. That is one reason it suits a sleepy mind. You do not need to chase motion. You can trust that some changes occur best when no one interferes. Outside, Athens settles into its evening again. The city is not silent, but it softens. Footsteps move past, then fade. A distant cart rattles once, then turns away. Smoke from cooking fires threads into the colder air. Somewhere, a door opens to lamplight, and a voice calls someone in. The press house listens without answering. You lower the lamp and look once more at the screw, the stone, the mats, and the jars. Their arrangement feels almost inevitable now, though it is the result of countless choices. This is how old workplaces can seem. They appear natural, because many hands have corrected them over time, removing what failed and keeping what fit. And with the jars resting in their places, the night's work becomes simply to let them be, while tomorrow's olives wait in groves, sacks, or dreams of morning hands. The olives beyond the walls can wait without being named now. Inside the press house, the night has gathered fully, and your hands have done enough. The lamp burns low near the jars, making small amber shapes on the clay, and the last faint scent of crushed fruit rests close to the floor. You stand for a moment without lifting, sorting, scraping, or turning. simply feeling the quiet after long work. The mats hang in their places, dark at the edges and drying slowly in the cool air. The millstone is still, its round weight settled into shadow. The screw has been eased, no longer holding pressure, and the bar lies where your morning hand would know to find it, though morning is no longer something to think about. A drop falls from one mat, then another, and the sound is soft enough to belong to sleep. You move once through the room, not to begin anything, only to leave each thing at rest. A cloth is smoothed over a jar. A small tool is nudged back from the edge of the table. The last trace of paste near the channel is wiped away with a tired, careful thumb. The oil beneath its covers will settle in darkness, and the heavier water will keep sinking by itself. Athens outside is quieter now. The stones of the street hold the day's coolness, and the distant roofs lie under a dark sky. Somewhere, a door closes gently. Somewhere, a lamp is lowered in another room. Here, in the old olive press of the 1870s, the work has gone from sound into stillness, from turning stone into resting clay, from warm hands into quiet tools. You lower the flame a little more, and the room softens around it. The jars keep their patient shine. The mats no longer drip. The floor is swept enough. The press is eased enough. And the night asks nothing further of you. The door is drawn in. The lamp is dimmed. And inside the Athens press house, the oil rests. The tools rest. And so do you.